Shellshock presents.
Ready?
Sharing with Shellshock Season 4.
New Age of Heroes.
And welcome to another episode of Sharing with Shellshock. I am your host, ShellshockPrime, and right here we're going to be talking about childhood TV shows. So we got all four guests are returning from previous episodes. So Tyler, good to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
And the same thing with you, Steve.
Thank you.
Same thing with you, Kyle.
Always a pleasure to be back.
And you too, Korshal.
Yeah, thanks for having me back again.
Absolutely. Like, we're going to talk about our favorite childhood TV shows, like, throughout the years. But before we get started, Tyler, remind everybody what type of content you do.
I make a lot of variety content, focusing mostly on Nintendo, Pokemon, Zelda, but a lot of multiplayer games as well here on Twitch.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Steve?
We mostly do like a weekly news show called the Zen's Path Podcast. And it's covering a lot of video game, but some movie and comic news. Every so often you can catch us on Twitch under the Zen's Path label because we've been playing a lot of content morning lately now.
Nice. Very nice. What about you, Kyle?
Still trying to dip my toes into content creating. I do have a YouTube channel. I mostly have shorts on there. I will get to content creating on a regular. Just need to find that one good capture card.
And you will find it someday. And what about you, Korshal?
So on Twitch, I'm a variety streamer. I love my platformers, and I'm a big Nintendo multiplayer baby. So you catch me a lot playing with Shell and others in a lot of multiplayer games. And I'm also on YouTube a music remixer where I love mainly the Mega Man X sound font. That's a big thing I do. I also love a lot of like synth rock. So you catch my music a lot on there for game remixes.
Nice. Very nice. So, we've all watched TV throughout multiple eras. Like everyone has like a certain like channel they love more than others, or they just flip between different channels to find the shows that they absolutely like. And we're gonna talk about that. So to start things off, we're gonna start off with you, Tyler. What were your earliest memories watching TV?
Oh God. uh just I mean, as a little kid, if we're talking earliest, we're going all the way back to Barney and such.
Yeah.
Dear God. That's the only one that like sticks out in my head sorely. That and Sesame Street. The two of those, like as little Tyler. Yeah. The only reason I am 100% sure on Barney is because there was my mom has an old Halloween picture of my sister and I dressed up as Barney and Baby Bop. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. What about you, Steve?
Probably single digits as well. Either growing up with first, I'm gonna be in the older category here, but instead of Sesame Street, I was watching Pinwheel. If anybody knows that show.
Oh, I remember Pinwheel. Yes, that was like
Okay, good.
old school like super old school Nickelodeon.
And if it wasn't that right before school, I was able to at least watch one or two episodes of Donald Duck Presents, and then I'm like, nope, I gotta catch the bus.
Yep. Yeah. I do remember Donald Duck Presents, or at least I've heard of it, but I'll talk more about Donald Duck later on. Kyle.
Yeah, earliest memories. Yeah. I'd probably say maybe like the PBS Kids days or something. And probably was like early Nickelodeon, early Cartoon Network. Those are the ones that really resonate with me. I think there might have been some Disney, but I think I was like too young to remember anything old school Disney.
Mm-hmm. Korshal.
If we're talking the earliest. We did have Touch on Barney and Sesame Street. I remember that.
Yeah.
I also remember way like when I was really young, single digit stuff, being into like Thomas the Tank Engine. I
Yes.
remember a lot of that. It was like a combination of the show and like the one of the doctor's office I got to that reinforced it was they had like a train set of Thomas stuff, and I was like, this is the thing I saw on the show, and I got really, really obsessed with that for a little while.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I share that. I share that obsession too. Like I was so obsessed with Thomas. Like Thomas toys, Thomas anything. Like I was that Thomas fan.
Like
Yeah, I wanted my own train track so bad. My parents never could.
yeah.
Yeah, you should see my collection of like how many other wooden trains I had. Like
Ooh.
my parents must have spent like so much money on that whole set.
Well, the thing with Thomas,
Little did we know that George Carlin was the conductor.
yeah, George Carlin, but he wasn't the first conductor. The first conductor was Ringo Starr from the Beatles. Because
Wow.
Ringo Starr used to be the narrator for the Thomas the Tank Engine shows and back in the UK. And the best way that they were able to bring Thomas the Tank Engine over here was a show called Shining Time Station, where they had a bunch of live action actors who it was kind of like a sitcom in a sense, but for little kids, but without and no laugh track. Where it was a train station. You had the conductor who was Ringo Starr in the first season, and then the other seasons was George Carlin, like he was like a tiny conductor. But despite all that, whenever they would tell stories to kids, it would just be in the form of the Thomas the Tank Engine shorts. I do remember that. So in regards to early childhood, like, and my favorite shows growing up, well, obviously for me, I grew up with Ninja Turtles. I grew up with Muppet Babies as a kid. I grew up with like I watched a lot of Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon might have been like my first channel I've ever watched back in my early. I'll just pinpoint the exact year to my earliest memories of watching TV. 89. I was only like I was about to turn 3 at the time. I watched a lot of Nickelodeon back then. Like Pinwheel was still on, but it was like at the tail end before they took that off. But I remember there was a show I used to watch called Eureka's Castle where they had like these puppets that were kind of like Muppets. And there was this dragon character named Magellan. The puppeteer who portrayed him would go on to become the bear from Bear in the Big Blue House. Which I remember seeing an episode or two of that because I lived at a time where Disney had Disney Channel was premium. Like it wasn't like part of the cable like channels until like later. So I would have like 3 months of Disney and it happened to pop up. But I remember so much. I did watch a lot of Sesame Street. I watched Barney as a kid. I actually remember having a Barney plushie as well, and my brother had a Baby Bob plushie. But I also remember another. But here's another show that I also watched with my brother, Arthur.
Oh,
Yes, we watched Arthur together. I also know about Big Comfy Couch, but I've never watched it because like by then like I was more into like shows that were within my own demographic. Though my brother did watch a little bit of Blue's Clues before he grew out of Nick Jr. But funny enough, the Nick Jr. I remember had anime, believe it or not. There was
It did?
yes. There were I'm going to pinpoint a couple of shows. There was this show called the Adventures of the Little Koala, which was a show about a koala. There was a show called Noozles, which had more koalas. And they came from Japan with very, very cheesy English dubs. There was also the Little Bits. And then there was a show from Spain called David the Gnome, which I used to love. David the Gnome. It has a very, very depressing finale.
Yeah, don't look up the ending.
Yeah. it's one of the most depressing endings to a show you would ever see, even for a children's show. I swear, it's depressing.
It's like Watership Down levels.
Yeah, yeah. It didn't really need to go that drastic, but I do remember that there was also an anime based on Grimm's Fairy Tale Classics. I used to watch that as a kid. And of course, growing up, before Cartoon Network was a thing, I remember like watching TNT and TBS when they had cartoons, but they had like a lot of Ted Turner stuff. Like they had, that's pretty much how I got into Tom and Jerry. But yeah, I watched a lot. I'll go into more in detail later on. But Steve, I'm going to start with you on the next one. What channels have you spent the most time watching growing up, and what shows stood out to you the most?
Wow. So I had the little. This is going to be showing my age a lot this episode. I had the little cable box connected by a wire, and it had 3 tiers you would change to go to the different channels.
Oh yeah.
So you had to go to like 31 for Disney. You had to go to like 2 or 4 for CBS, ABC, and Fox. I think overall, when I was watching cartoons, they were either, or even the shows I remember as a kid, they were always on Fox, and I want to say CBS, but I can't remember some of the networks of some of these. But Fox came prevalent until like cable gave me the rest of my weird shows, especially Nickelodeon.
Mm-hmm.
But to give you at least like some shows that are not cartoons, most of them I think were on CBS or ABC, but there was 2 shows that stood out a lot to me, and that one was Small Wonder. And
Oh
it was
my
a family
god.
where it was a family where the daughter was a cyborg or a robot
Yes,
back then.
I'm familiar with that
And
show.
so she had to act like a robot the entire time, and they had to get into their hijinks. And this was usually around the time, if you were watching that, you were watching Alf, because Alf was great.
I watched Alf too.
And then you were like, what else can I get that has this kind of weirdness? And another one for me was Out of This World, where the girl could freeze time whenever she wanted to because she was an alien from another planet.
That one I haven't seen. I haven't seen that one.
But yeah, those were the best. I will throw in a game show because I tried to, as a kid, I tried to apply to be on the game show, and I got a rejection letter saying I was too young. And it was the game show called Starcade, and that's with 1 R. It's not for wrestling.
I know what you're talking
And
about.
I loved that as a kid so much. I wanted to get on the show so bad, and they're like, "You're not old enough." And by the time I was, that show was long gone, and all we had was Nick Arcade, which is good, but it wasn't Starcade.
I do remember, because I remember Twitch had a day where they actually showed reruns of Starcade, and I've seen it, like, because I've never got a chance to watch it because by the time that I started watching TV, that show was gone.
Yeah. But yeah, that show's amazing.
So, what about you, Kyle? What channels have you spent the most time watching TV growing up, and what show stood out to you?
Yeah, I'd say like I spent like equal time between Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network since those were like the prominent TV networks at the time. I think I've spent some time on the Disney, but I didn't really remember much of that. As well as like went back to PBS Kids a couple of times for like shows like say like Arthur and Cyber Chase. Like I was
Mhm.
surprised Cyber Chase is still going on. Like I thought that show ended years ago.
Yeah, like, I'm actually shocked as to what shows are still even going on, like, even to this day.
Yeah, 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 Caitlin, it is still going on. I am surprised it is still going on to this day.
Yeah. What about?
Yeah, that's
Well, go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, but shows that stood out to me, like I I know like Keenan and Kel was like one show, just like their comedy duo between the two. Just like Kel being accident prone and Keenan always coming up with all these like plotting ideas,
Yeah.
as well as Sabrina Teenage Witch was another one. I don't remember too much of it, but I have been like recently been rewatching it, and man, like it really was like a good show at the time. And I also been recently rewatching Clarissa Explains It All.
Mm-hmm.
I just liked how that format was like pretty much like telling everything from Clarissa's like point of view
Yeah.
rather than focusing on everything else. Like That show was like ahead of its time.
It really was. Korshal, what channels have you spent the most time watching TV growing up, and what show stood out to you?
So, because of the cable package that my household had,
Yeah.
I knew within 4 channels of themselves were Toon Disney or whatever moniker it was going through, because it went through several throughout my childhood as they rebranded it. Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network. They were always at certain spots where you're like, Cartoon Network number wise is at the top, Nickelodeon is right below that, and then there's like normal Disney, and then there's Toon Disney, right? So I was like, it's these are my spread. It's my wild west of television, depending on the time. And you kind of figured out certain shows being on at certain points. Once you like got after school, you're like, oh, they're always showing, like, if I was young enough, the tie-in cartoons to a lot of Disney movies. Like you get the Aladdin cartoon, you'd get the Timon and Pumbaa show, which was one I remember, or like Recess. You get all these kind of things I remember from Disney, from Cartoon Network. I remember a little later on from like Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy was a big one I
Yes.
remember a lot. The Nickelodeon was like almost exclusively SpongeBob that sticks to my mind at the time. The coveted golden early seasons that everyone loves the
The best.
reference about. Even though there's like, so one, I'm just to say SpongeBob's an obvious one, but the thing that always like, if we're talking about a childhood thing that stood out to me that like specifically made me feel like I was being gaslit for a while, there was one I'm trying to remember the episode name. Dang it. There's one that had like the big like thief guy with the black ski mask coming to town in SpongeBob. And I don't remember that at all. But I swore it aired once. And then a couple years later, they're like, we're airing this big thing starring this big spooky guy. And I saw it and I was like, I swear they've aired that before. Why are they making this like a new thing again? I felt like I was going crazy as a kid when it did that. It was like the one thing that stood out to me was just like network meddling in some way. And I really have to look into that more. I should have done research tonight into that, but like that stick to me a lot. And also, I didn't watch this channel technically the most because it was on Saturdays, but big shout outs to Foxbox. The 4Kids studio, like, all right, that studio kind of had its goofs, what they localized and what they did, but their marketing slapped for my little kid mind. And there was a bunch of hooks they got into me with like the TMNT
Yes.
Thousands run after the 80s cartoon. I've always been a Nintendo kid, so when I figured out Kirby was on there, I was
Yes.
immediately wanting to catch that every time. Sonic X was a big one. So
Yep.
while I only went to that channel on the Saturday mornings, desperately trying to catch very particular cartoons, that's also something I have strong memories of.
Yep. What about you, Tyler?
I'm kind of in a very similar box of, the whole smorgasbord of all of the above for the cartoon channels. I call that my after school time because the evening was dominated by reality TV shows.
Yes.
So your Survivors, your Big Brothers, your Amazing Races, all of those, like my mother, like when she retired, her coworkers called her the queen of reality TV. And that was passed down to her children very clearly.
Nice.
So yeah, a lot of that shows that stick out to me. Like we'll go back to the cartoons for that. Pokemon, surprise. That should be no surprise to anybody knowing giant Pikachu.
Yep.
But yeah, that I remember the run up to SpongeBob premiering and all of the hype that Nickelodeon was doing for that.
Same here.
Which is it just feels so weird because that was right around 2000 if I'm not mistaken. So I was about 6 years old when that occurred.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then a little bit later on, another show that stuck out a lot because I really didn't have much anime experience, but Code Lyoko on Cartoon Network.
Yes.
Fantastic gem.
Yes. I love Code Lyoko.
I wish there was more to that because that show deserved it.
Absolutely.
It really did.
Yeah. there's way too many shows that were really good. There were many channels. Like the main channels I've spent the most time on growing up. If I wanted to get my fix for cartoons, it was like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network. I've grew up with MTV, watching a lot of music videos, but there were also some other shows they've had. Um, like the late 90s as early 2000s was mainly when I was watching a lot of MTV. That was like my era right there. Um, I am a huge fan of Celebrity Deathmatch, where they had like these claymation celebrities beating the ever loving crap out of each other with the voice impersonations are some of the worst, but it's still funny, it's still hilarious. I used to watch that a lot. Um, I grew up with Beavis and Butthead. I grew up with Daria. Um, I grew up watching so in addition to South Park, um there was another show that used to come on after South Park for a while. But it was like a parody of reality shows with cartoon characters called Drawn Together. And
I have both.
they had a SpongeBob parody in that. They had a Pikachu parody. They had a Link parody. They had a Betty Boop parody. They had pretty much like made fun of like animation as a whole. It was supposed to be a joke. It had 3 seasons, got canceled. Then they had a movie, um, which I haven't seen the movie, but I heard the movie sucked. But I used to watch Drawn Together. Um, I watched a lot of shows from like so what from the 90s with regards to like cartoons that I grew up with. Um, there was a time where NBC used to have Saturday morning cartoons, and then they stopped it around like 92 because they wanted to pivot to like the teen demographic where they had Saved by the Bell and some other like teen sitcoms and sports stuff. Um, but when I watched NBC as a kid, the last couple of cartoons they had Captain N and they had the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, but at that time it was the third season where it was Super Mario World, which is famous for the Mama Luigi episode. Um, they had a show called Wish Kid, which had Macaulay Culkin because back then, after Home Alone became such a huge hit, they had to put him on everything. Um, I remember watching a lot of CBS growing up. That's where they had Ninja Turtles. That's where they had Garfield and Friends, Muppet Babies. Um, what I also remember watching was like on syndication, I would see Gumby. I watched a lot of Gumby growing up, but then they had reruns of Nickelodeon, then they had reruns of Cartoon Network. Watched Beetlejuice as a kid, like the cartoon. I actually watched the cartoon Beetlejuice before I watched the movie. Um, which the mid to late 80s up to the 90s, they used to make cartoons based on movies. And they actually used to have a RoboCop cartoon, despite the fact that RoboCop was an R-rated movie. They had a Rambo cartoon. There was a cartoon based on the Karate Kid. Um, they there was a cartoon where they had like um former comedian John Candy, may he rest in peace, where he was a camp counselor.
Yeah, Camp Candy.
I love that show.
Love that. Yep.
He's my favorite comedian. Um, I've watched what else did I watch? I remember like the thing is my brother was a huge fan of Survivor. He used to watch a lot of Survivor on CBS back in the day. He still does watch it from time to time, but he used to watch Survivor. Um, we tried watching Big Brother, but we couldn't get into it. But he loved Survivor. Um, I did watch American Idol for the first few seasons. And I tuned out because I was like, yeah, lost interest. Um, I I never got into Lost though. Um, I never got into Heroes, and I kind of regret not getting into it. Um, I I unfortunately never got into Star Trek. I'm more into Star Wars though, but um, I grew up watching like in terms of Saturday mornings, like when NBC cut cartoons, I pivoted to Fox and ABC. Like Fox Kids, I would watch Tiny Toon Adventures, um, X-Men, Batman the Animated Series. ABC, they had a pup named Scooby Doo at the time. They had the Addams Family cartoon, which not many people remember even had a cartoon back in the 90s. Um, ABC also had Sonic the Hedgehog. Because there were two Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons that I remember watching that came out around the same time. The weekday one was The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, where it was comedic. It was Sonic and Tails, and you had like Scratch Grounder and Dr. Robotnik. That was Monday through Friday, syndicated. But Saturday mornings, you had a more serious cartoon. It was just called Sonic the Hedgehog. We called it Sonic Satam. It had the Freedom Fighters and Eggman, like, because like while in Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, like Eggman or Dr. Robotnik, whatever you want to call him, he wanted to take over the world, but he always failed at it. But in Sonic Satam, he already took over. Like he already had it. And then that's where we had the Freedom Fighters. So
That one still has the best opening intro music.
it's one of the best, especially for Sonic.
Hands down, of all the Sonic cartoons, it's the one I can always like sing because I was like, I love that one so much.
It's always between that and the one from Sonic X where it's like, gotta go fast, gotta go fast. I watched Sonic X as well. I've watched. I remember there was a 3D cartoon I watched back in the day on ABC called Reboots. It was nothing like anything I've seen, and I thought it was great.
For a lot of people, yeah.
But ABC screwed that show over. But they did re-air it on Cartoon Network, and they got more episodes that did not air in the United States, so we got to see more. And the first anime that I've watched where I was aware that it actually was an anime was Sailor Moon. I watched Sailor Moon because, like, I remember we got the trifecta, Sailor Moon, then we got Dragon Ball Z, and Pokemon. And Pokemon was a huge one for me. Like, watching Pokemon with my brother, he got me into it, and then, like, around the time where it was the third episode, it was the one where Ash caught both Caterpie and Pidgeotto, and he beat Team Rocket on his own for the first time. And then my brother and I just watched it every day, and we pretty much got everything. The games, the cards, everything. And I'm still here, playing Pokemon.
Yeah, I had to get up at 6 a.m. On the East Coast to watch any anime because at my age, like, anime was still literally foreign. So they're like,
Yeah.
we don't know how good this will be. So they put it on at 6 a.m. And I got to watch a heavily censored, edited Sailor Moon where they would just tell me to brush my teeth at the end or be nice to strangers and stuff. And then I didn't get Dragon Ball GT. I didn't get Dragon Ball Z. I got Dragon Ball. And
Oh, you
I
got
was just
Dragon
like,
Ball.
what is this? I was like, I don't even get this. So I was just like, I'm going to pivot to other stuff instead.
Yep. Well, and the thing is that I remember as I was watching more Sailor Moon, because I remember, like, there were two specific characters that I want to bring up. Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune, both of which are lesbians in Japan, but when they localized it here, they're cousins. And that made it worse.
One of them, they even changed the gender because they just revoiced Zoocyte.
Yeah, Zoisite. Yeah.
As a woman, and I was like, and finding eventually when the internet opened up to me and I found like a whole text file of all the changes, I was just like, what do you mean that all this was missing? I need to find the originals.
All these changes to so many anime back in the day, and I'm like, just like, all I have to say are 3 words. What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, those animes were like really like heavily censored. Like, I had no idea like how much was censored until years later. Especially like with how some of the scenes were like a little bit fucked up to not show any nudity. Dialogue was changed. Like, they really did not hold back on censorship.
You find out how many times on Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon that the main characters have had a gun pulled on them, and then the poor kid's like, no.
Yeah.
Ben the Keith had a gun. You could tell he obviously had a gun, but they took that out. They edited that gun out of there. Like he looked like he had this, but he was not pulling anything. He didn't look like he was pulling anything, but you could tell that it was obviously supposed to be a gun.
They would just be like, "Listen here, kid," and they'd be like, "Oh my god, a finger."
Like, I also watched Speed Racer. I watched Astro Boy. Astro Boy could never catch on in the United States, but Speed Racer did catch on. Um, of course, I watched Power Rangers. I've watched like VR Troopers, Big Bad Beetleborgs. But you wonder what's one live action series from Japan that could never catch on here, outside of like a fan base like that's niche. Kamen Rider could never catch a break in the United States. Kamen Rider could never catch a break.
Not even with Mark Hamill, it couldn't.
No. But I do remember. But in terms of other shows, like Looney Tunes was a huge part of my childhood. I watched a lot of Looney Tunes. Watched a lot of Disney, like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck shorts. Like, as a kid, I resonated with Mickey Mouse, but I'm more of a Donald Duck fan now because I grew up with DuckTales. I grew up with Darkwing Duck. But like Donald Duck, I absolutely find his character fascinating compared to Mickey Mouse, who I later thought was more like kind of. I don't want to say Mickey's boring. He's not boring. It's just he's basic to me.
He was more meticulous to me, so whenever he did an adventure, I watched it for that. But Donald Duck was just funny, so he made me laugh with his caricatures. Like, he was just like not getting along with his girlfriend, or he was just like trying to run a store or something like that. So it was,
Exactly.
I don't know, I could relate to him more.
Like Disney for me, like was a huge part of my childhood. Not only that, but also like I pretty much grew up with everything. Disney, Hanna-Barbera, Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry. But yeah, like, but the shows that stood out to me the most, like there's way too many. Like, one of the biggest ones that stood out the most to me that no one ever, that not many people seem to realize was an actual show. There was this show on Nickelodeon back in the late 90s, where there was this guy who was an alien. It was called The Journey of Alan Strange. It had like 2-3 seasons, and it got canceled. I thought it was a pretty interesting show, but because I remember watching the Secret World of Alex Mack, and that used to come after that. But then there was another show called 100 Good Deeds for Eddie McDowd, where there was this teenager named Eddie McDowd who was voiced by Seth Green, becomes a dog, and the only way for him to turn back into a human is to do 100 good deeds. They never finished the show. Nickelodeon has a history of having some really good shows that they never finish. And mind you, they were like that even before SpongeBob became a thing. Because like, yeah, like you had the Doug originally aired on Nickelodeon before moving to like Disney. Yeah, Rugrats, Rocco, Red and Stimpy, Hey Arnold, and all that. But of course, SpongeBob was the golden goose, still is. But how many of you remember? This one show on Cartoon Network called Megas XLR, where there was this guy who managed to get this robot. They used to air on Saturday nights from 2004 to 2005. Got canceled because Cartoon Network apparently never wanted that show to even like be a thing, and they wrote it and they made it a tax write-off. Good show.
Man, I love that. Like, we love giant robots, right?
It was one of those shows where like they were trying to make a show that it was inspired by anime, even though it was a Western based show. Of course, the Avatar series, like The Last Airbender, Legend of Korra. But I got another one to name drop. Steven Universe. Not my childhood, but I loved it. I just couldn't be remiss without mentioning Steven Universe. All right. Next one. Kyle. We'll start with you for this one. What are some of your favorite shows from your childhood? And we're gonna keep it to 3 shows at most, because otherwise we'd be here all night. So you'll go first, Kyle.
Yeah. there are just so many good ones. It's like try to like pick your favorite child or like favorite teacher. And, like trying to think of like I'll probably like pick like a few mentions like from the Cartoon Network one. Like Powerpuff Girls is like definitely like one of those shows I remember watching the most. Like just Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup like kicking ass. Yeah, that show was like really was like something of its time, especially with all the lessons they gave. Like, I remember that one episode where they were fought that female villain and they just schooled her on equality.
Mm-hmm.
And, like that was like really memorable. And
Yeah,
also an episode when Mojo was babysitting them, and they just pretty much schooled him on who Napoleon was. So it's like he told Napoleon all wrong, and man, Miss Keene deserves like a raise with how
she
much
does.
knowledge that these girls got.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Let's see. I'd say like from Nickelodeon, like Nancy Classified was another good show. Just
I
like all
love
those
this
tips that
classified.
Ned gave. Yeah, I just wish that show like got more recognition, because like when it ended on its third season with that field trip episode, like I feel like it could have done like a little bit more, like ended it off with a graduation episode.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that would have been nice.
yeah. I
Of
feel like
course.
any other shows that weren't by him got didn't get much recognition.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was like really good at its time.
yeah. W- Yeah, one other
And
show you go, Kyle?
I'm trying to think of another show. One more show I think that was really memorable was definitely Totally Spies.
Yes, Totally Spies.
You know, like just like seeing those girls like kicking ass, like traveling the world, and
Yep.
like they just made like just like all that girl power in the early 2000s. Like I was all for it,
Yeah.
and I had no idea that it lasted more than 4 seasons. Like when it aired its fourth season on Cartoon Network, like I thought that was it, but
Mm.
apparently there was like two more seasons as well as the origin movie. They even have like a whole new season with whole new animation.
Oh yeah. All right. Korshal, what's your top three favorite shows that you grew up watching?
So the ones that's man, if I had to pick three, I would say stuck with me the strongest. I get to dig up the Toonami block a little bit of ones I remember from the weekends on Cartoon Network. It's going to be a lot of anime talk for a second.
Yeah.
The first one I would say, because I was talking about it before from Foxbox, was like I was and still am very obsessed with Kirby. So actually, right back at you was one that I was all like that was the driving force to get me out of bed on Saturdays. So I
Yes.
would always want to get there. I want everyone in their hokey accents that 4 Kids would give everybody. And like the I'm talking about this with friends, like because of all the Air Riders hype recently, of thinking about like the Southern accent DDD, this like the Spanish like Legend of Zorro Meta Knight.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Like
get
there's
this time.
there's so much of that show that sticks with me today just because I've continued to be a Nintendo boy through and through.
Yeah.
And that one like will never leave. If I had to pick like my Foxbox contestant to stand tall on that pile of just picking a few things, it would definitely be Kirby. Out of Toonami, there are two shows, like two animes that they showed there that I forever like define me as an individual. One was Outlaw Star. I've never forgotten that show either. That was a fever dream almost of the robots with grappler arm, like robot spaceship grappler arms, duking it out in space, ignoring
Yes.
all like precepts of physics out the window. Its rule of cool is basically that entire show from start to finish, and I adored it. I would always want to see every bit of it, no matter when it would come on. I was like, give me that. Give me my space adventures. I was always big on like the action part of Star Wars. So like we just show me that like tuned up even more with like the caster gun and like the big spells and everything. It was very flashy, classic anime, just like schlock
Yeah.
almost, but man, it was so good. Excuse me.
No excuse.
The other one from Tsunami that as an individual actually formed me in I think a lot of positive ways. And I looked to the main character as honestly a bit of a role model for like what I wanted to be. And I'm going to say this acknowledging that the creator of this series is a creep, but like I still have to acknowledge the good that the show did is Roni Kenshin is one that I really like. And I say that knowing the creator cringe,
Yeah.
but I I will fully say that, but I cannot like just pass the show up and saying that it legitimately like Kenshin as a character, despite the problems that come with the show's baggage, I would be lying if I said I didn't want to be exactly him.
Yeah.
And the kindness that he had generally in that show
Yeah.
of being like this super soft boy who just happened to have like the badass switch that you could flip on to really like defend those you cared about. That
Right.
stuck with me, which made it unfortunate when you learned other stuff later on. But like
Mhm.
it stuck with me. I will say it formed me, and it's definitely one. Even if it's complicated, I still think about it and what it did for me in the positive, even if I have to acknowledge the negative.
Yeah. All right. What about your top 3, Tyler?
Okay, so I've got a good spread. We'll start with the obvious Pokemon. It's who I am today. It really shaped and formed me and a lot of my friend groups going through elementary school. Continuing off of that, something that we haven't talked about, but it popped in my head when you were speaking earlier. Another from a movie to a TV show that quite didn't get finished the way it should have. The Adventures of Lilo and Stitch. Was a big part, especially on the Disney side of my childhood, especially around that 2nd to 3rd grade area. I feel like is where things were the most prevalent on that one for me.
Yeah.
And then another big one that I don't think someone's brought up yet would be the Fairly Odd Parents. So,
Fairly Odd Parents. Yep.
another juggernaut for Nickelodeon there on that one.
Absolutely. Steve, what about your top 3?
Hey, get ready to Google, people. So
Okay.
I'm gonna give an honorable mention because Nickelodeon had a lot of bangers for me, but they had these quick shorts that would be aired between cartoons called sports cartoons.
Yeah, sports
which would-
cartoon.
which would just be the cat and the hippo playing darts, basketball, like just random sports. And
Yes.
it just taught you like the cat would be unsportsmanlike and the hippo was just honorable.
Yes.
I never missed those. If I saw those coming, I stopped leaving the room for a commercial and went right back to watching that.
Mm-hmm.
Then I don't have the material to show this off, but if you look it up, I had all the VHSs of a series that used different animation styles called Mad Balls. If anybody knows what Mad Balls are, the toys. The one that they were all just balls. One was a mummy. One was like Slobulus, he was called. There was Commander Wolf Breath. But they had almost like a skit show where they just did different things as their characters,
Mhm.
but they did everything from stop motion to animation. And I think I wore down those VHSs how many times I watched them because
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was ever aired on TV. Speaking of Pokemon, pre-Pokemon, in terms of trying to at least collect them all toy-wise, I was big into the Smurfs.
Nice.
Especially because you wanted to see how many Smurfs there were out there, and then eventually they started releasing figures of them.
Yeah.
So I caught all the episodes of that, especially the weirder ones later on when they ignored the Smurfs. I still have the question of like which Smurf was sacrificed to Gargamel. How does Gargamel know they're delicious to begin with?
Yeah.
He just knows, and I was like, somebody had to be the sacrifice. Was it Mother Smurf? Because there is no Mama Smurf. So I was like, who knows? This is something as an adult you think of. As a kid, you're just like, oh, this is cute. But number one, which I'll watch, which if we have a question coming up later, that's the guilty pleasure that people don't like, and that's Captain N, the Game Master.
Mm.
I never missed an episode, even when they ignored copyright and played like a Michael Jackson's Thriller on the Castlevania episode.
Yes.
Going back, yeah, they butchered pretty much everybody, but it was just like you idolized Captain N himself because he was just a guy with Nintendo collectibles sucked into Nintendo games.
Yeah. Like the one that really broke me the most was like what they did to Mega Man. Like
Mega High.
and then Simon
But the
Belmont.
really
There was a
I
Ruby
said the Ruby Spears cartoon, or no? Just in Captain N.
and
Okay.
Captain N. Like Mega Man was in that. Yeah, the Ruby Spears. I did watch the Ruby Spears cartoon. I enjoyed that one. That one is a much better representation of Mega Man than what Captain N had. And speaking of Mega Man, another show I'll bring up is the NT Warrior. I watched that, but they never finished in the United States.
Yes. Yeah,
So
that's a shame. I would have loved it.
yeah. So top three, and there's so many great shows, and like I have my favorites. Like obviously, like my obvious favorites would be Rocko's Modern Life would be one of them. Or like Hey Arnold, or if we do Cartoon Network, we would talk about the Powerpuff Girls, or we would talk about Coding Kids Next Door. Um, but I'm gonna go a different direction here with my top three in terms of like childhood shows. Because I want to go with shows that weren't really as obvious coming from me. Number three, and this is not, and mind you, this is not necessarily meaning like I like these shows better than some of the other shows that everyone liked, because I otherwise I would have made a different list than this. But number three for me, I will say that growing up, I remember watching like a lot of so I mentioned Eureka's Castle. I've mentioned Arthur, like, and some other shows that were on PBS Kids or Nick Jr. But there was one show that stood out to me the most during the time that I used to watch Nick Jr. as a little kid. Um, like I said earlier, David the Gnome, because that one, um, they went on adventures, but it was just the ending that really stood out. Very dark, very depressing. Number two, um, I remember watching a whole bunch of compilation shows that had like different shorts and whatnot. But Cartoon Network had a show where some of these shows would go on to become actual shows on Cartoon Network. It was called the What a Cartoon Show. They would have pilots to different shows. They had pilots to Johnny Bravo, Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Laboratory. Um, they also had Coward Chicken on there, Courage the Cowardly Dog. Um, so, and there was also a show. There was also a short called Larry and Steve, which take a wild guess as to what that became. No one can guess? I'll tell you.
Oh, I can guess.
What?
Hey, Family Guy.
Yep, bingo, Family Guy. Because that was a short that was made by Seth MacFarlane, for Cartoon Network, and then that was the basis of Family Guy. But yeah, like that's number two. The What a Cartoon Show, or it used to be the World Premiere Toon Show, but they rebranded it to What a Cartoons. And number one in terms of childhood TV shows, I remember used to be really, really obsessed with a lot of Marvel shows. Like obviously DC was really good. Marvel was really good too. Spider-Man the Animated Series from the 90s from Fox. To me, it was the one that I absolutely loved. Like, because it was what got me into Spider-Man. Just like how X-Men the Animated Series got me into X-Men. Then you also have Batman the Animated Series, like, which DC fans love that. I was more of a Marvel kid than DC kid, so but I will say that's definitely up there. Because I could go on and on. Like I would have picked the obvious ones, but I wanted to pick three shows. Now here's the next one. I'm gonna go with Korshal for this one. What were some shows where the moment they started, you instantly changed the channel?
So it was less because like I didn't like, or like, man, how do I say this? So I was a very rules like obedient child. So when I was told things were like more for adult programming or things, or like even just like say Adult Swim's message of like, oh, we're starting like the mature programming starting now, right? I had it in my head that like I should stay as far away from this as possible. I was like actually terrified, and that I didn't know what was going to happen if I was watching things that were not branded for me. So the moment like you see anything like, oh, like you're slightly past like 8 o'clock and Adult Swim just started or something, and you see like the Family Guy intro starts, you're like, I'm bailing. I'm immediately out of there and stuff like that. And it's not because like they're actually like years later, you know, when you actually get to watch this, you're like, actually, that wasn't that bad. But they were just like anytime a like the more mature block came up, and it was just like, this is for like the adults because it might be violent or something. It was like me following T for Teen when I was like 12. I was like, I can't touch this. This isn't for me.
Yeah.
And I got to miss out on a lot of like better anime that happened on Adult Swim. Heck, in like Classic Gundam was on I think Adult Swim for a while,
It was.
along with I think Full Metal Alchemist and stuff.
If Full
And
Metal
these were
Alchemist,
things, yeah, these are things I never touched because of just a content label made me afraid. Like, even though I would have been just fine, I was always, the moment I saw it, I was just dipping. And like, I don't think I had many shows where I saw it and went, oh, that's not for me. I'm out of here. I would just be like, oh, I'm uncomfortable watching this. I was like this with The Simpsons too. And The Simpsons is funny and like perfectly fine. But as far as I knew, you're like, oh, this isn't my like group. This is rated above me. I see that box in the corner of the thing, and I'm like, I'm able to see that's not for me. And I'm not sure I should be watching this. I legitimately thought I would get in trouble from my parents, but I don't think they even like knew what I really watched or cared. But in
Mhm.
my own mind, I was like the most stringent hall patrol monitor I could ever have going down the corridors of television programming. So
yeah.
anything that was like, oh, maybe you shouldn't have watched this if you're 12, I was like, yes, sir, I am changing the channel.
All right. Tyler.
I, on the other hand, cannot think of anything that I really just like, oh, nope, not watching that. Change the channel. If anything, I was changing the channel to go to a show that was starting up that I wanted to watch.
Yeah.
I think that was the big driver for changing channel, because like I've just been sitting here thinking, I mean, maybe later on, like you start seeing some shows that as you get older, you're like, oh, that's too young for me. That gets shoved to the side. Yeah, no, I really don't have a specific show that I was like, nope, I'm not going to watch that.
All right. That's
Which, you know,
that.
better to have more variety in life, right?
Absolutely. And that's perfectly fine. Steve.
Okay, well, let's see how much flack I get for mine from my age.
Ooh.
But for me, I was turning away from the television if G.I. Joe or Transformers were coming on. I just never got into those. I don't know. It was just, maybe it's because I caught the anime and mostly the Disney cartoon stuff more, but I could never get into those as a child. I love their games, but their shows never clicked. I could say that I definitely changed the channel on Saturday mornings towards the later afternoon when you knew cartoons were over, because they would show this show called Mortal Kombat Conquest. That was so horrible
Oh
that
my
I knew
God.
immediately. I knew immediately to switch the channel because they were trying to make a live action prequel to the games, and I was like, no, thank you. I don't need this.
I've watched an episode of that and it was boring.
I was just like, I'm not going down that route. So yeah, every Saturday you could tell like when the cartoon blocks were finally over on every channel, it was either Mortal Kombat Conquest or American Gladiators. And I've come to appreciate American Gladiators, but I will not appreciate Mortal Kombat Conquest.
Okay. All right. Kyle.
trying to think of like trying to think because don't think I really like know like any shows like I would personally ignore. I mean, there are some shows I would prefer over the other one. So like when they were airing at the same time, I don't have to choose like which one. But the only one I can really think of is like Ed and Eddie. Only one that was like with my dad because he forbidden me from watching it. Like I went in more detail about that when I was like during a Cartoon Network episode. I still have yet to ask him like why he didn't want me to watch that.
Yeah.
It's like I mean, like I can get like some of the humor, but it's nothing like bad compared to like other shows back then. And that's the only time I can think of like when I had to change the channel when I was visiting him, and the minute it came on, I had to change it.
Yeah. That's fair. But anything else?
Yeah, can't really think of any other shows other than Ed and Eddie, just because my dad forbid it.
Okay, that's fair. All right, so I apologize in advance, Korshal, but the first one that I have to bring up in regards to shows where I immediately change the channel the moment it's on, Rurouni Kenshin. The moment it's on, I change the channel.
Just wasn't your thing, huh?
Nope. I did not want to ever get into Rurouni Kenshin. And after hearing about how the creep of creator was, I'm like, yeah, I guess more likely I never will.
Yeah, I get that completely. Like, I wouldn't want to support anything new he does now. Like all the reboot stuff, there's no way I'd be buying that now.
Unfortunately, I got into the wrong Gundam series that made me not want to get into Gundam ever. And you wonder what Gundam show made me change the channel on other Gundam shows? SD Gundam. Because of that, I changed the channel on all the other Gundam shows, which I missed out on Gundam Seed. I missed out on Gundam Wing, Mobile Suit Gundam, G Gundam. I missed out on all of that because of SD Gundam. Ooh. What?
But you had a backup. You had Samurai Pizza.
I love Samurai Pizza Cats. I love Samurai Pizza Cats. That's another one I loved growing up.
You're dressed like Gundams, but you were like, no, these guys are great.
I watched a little bit of Voltron. I've watched a little bit of like Ronin Warriors. Like there's so much obscure anime I watched. But if I had to think of another anime that I would instantly change the channel the moment it was on as well, and if I had to think of one that was on like the old Toonami before the old Toonami ended, I would change the channel because for a while Toonami actually had like a 2002 2003 version of He-Man, and I was like, no, I don't even like the original He-Man, so no. I kind of did not really ever get into G.I. Joe properly. I never really got into G.I. Joe. I tried. Maybe it's because of the fact that I didn't understand it when I was a kid. I was like maybe like 3. Because I remember after that I would watch like DuckTales and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. They actually had a block before the Disney Afternoon became a thing. I never got into the original Transformers, like, and I watched Beast Wars. I've watched Transformers Armada. I watched Transformers Energon, and I didn't like it. So I did not watch Cybertron or anything else afterwards, other than the first 3 live-action Michael Bay movies, which that's the less said about the third one of that, the better. I've never really I would always change the channel whenever like a show is coming on and I've seen the episode already and I don't feel like watching it, so I want to watch something else. But I'm going to name to answer Noble Boy's question in the chat, what was the wrong Gundam I watched? SD Gundam. It was the Chibi Gundams. I regret even giving that show a shot when I should have watched other Gundam shows. But I would change the channel the moment that I would see, like, I remember he was an infamous event where I instantly changed the channel. Does anybody remember the time? There was like a time where Nickelodeon had this campaign called the World Day of Play, where they paused all of their programming just so that they encourage kids to go outside and play. That was free ratings for Cartoon Network. People changed the Cartoon Network just to watch cartoons. So they pretty much just threw in the towel and let Cartoon Network win for the day.
Yeah,
So
I remember that. Like, I kept going back to Nickelodeon to see if they ended yet, but I guess I just kept watching Cartoon Network and Disney until Nickelodeon came back.
um I'll say this. You wonder what was even before the Nickelodeon World Day of Play, there was one time, New Year's Day, 1994, they had a Nick at Night marathon on daytime when they should be airing Nickelodeon and Nickelodeon content. And this was before I switched to a different provider that had Cartoon Network. So I had to rely on syndication, and I just played video games for the rest of the day. I was playing Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on my Genesis. So, granted, and you want to know what's the worst part? It was a Saturday. Nickelodeon fucked up. They should not have done a Nick at Night marathon. Like, they never did a Nick at Night marathon on a Saturday ever again afterwards. Wow. Big mistake. If I would have had Cartoon Network back then, I didn't get it till a couple months later, but if I would have had Cartoon Network back then, that would have been perfect. But I remember there was a bunch of shows from like the 50s and 60s that would change because when I was a little kid, I was like, ew, black and white shows. Yet there was some that I've watched. Like I watched Lassie, I watched I Love Lucy, but more on that later. Mainly because like the reason why is because it was mainly watching it just to get through it because the next show that was about to come on was a show I wanted to watch or the cartoons were coming on. So that's the thing. Sometimes you just want to watch some shows just to get through it. You're not really watching it because you want to watch it. You just want to get through it because the next show you want to see comes on. That's how it always works. One more show that I could think of that I changed the channel the moment it was on. I'm just gonna say this right now. I fucking hate Roseanne. I hate Roseanne so much. I never found Roseanne Barr to be funny. So, whenever her show would be on, like the moment you see the intro where they're all like eating dinner, and then the moment Roseanne is on, nope, change the fucking channel. And honestly, I will say I am 100% vindicated on my hatred towards Roseanne Barr. But even back when I was a little kid, I never liked it. The only person I would watch that show for is John Goodman. That's it. He's the only reason I would ever even want to watch that show because I like John Goodman. But Roseanne Barr, no. Never liked the show. Never wanted to get into her show. And I never even watched The Conners. Because even though she wasn't in it, it's just the damage was already done, unfortunately. So, yeah. I still hate Roseanne.
The worst was when you, like a sports show or a special, would preempt your program, therefore pushing something you hated into your time slot and erasing the show you wanted to watch. So they'd be like, we don't have time for your show, but here's Roseanne.
As someone who is a huge fan of professional wrestling, I remember when I was young, and specifically on the USA Network when I would watch the WWF, well, before they became the WWE, they used to be preempted at some point by there was a particular like Westminster dog show that would preempt it. It would preempt wrestling, and I'm like, but I wanted to watch wrestling. And then later on, like, there was another channel that had wrestling. It was TNT, and then they had WCW. So I'm like, okay, there's wrestling there. So, yeah. So, those are my answers.
You got to record the block before and the block after your show when you had the VHS recordings.
Yeah.
TNT would do it when before you got to watch Nitro, you were having to watch the credits for something like Thunder in Paradise, and you're like, I don't want to watch this show,
Oh
but I have
yeah.
to watch the last few minutes. And while our picture in picture is saying, "Here's your show you want to watch," that's not going to be full screen just yet.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like man, I remember a time where there were so many shows where we would watch that like they used to have commercials that hyped you up, and then it's like, or especially if it's an episode you already seen, like it still gets you hyped up because you want to watch the show. It makes you watch it even more. Yes, and yes, Sergeant Slaughter was on GI Joe. Uh let's see. So anyway, so the next one, um I got another one for you guys, and we're gonna go back to Tyler for this. Um, uh, do you have any guilty pleasures?
I'm really boring this episode. I can't think of any shows that I would go back and watch just because, or a show that people didn't like that I like. I was fairly kosher. I enjoyed most of the shows that were on and running, be it, the live action Wizards of Waverly Place or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
Hannah Montana. Like, I have a younger sister, so growing up, we had a mix of both of our interests kind of on the TV at all times.
Yeah.
So there was nothing really there that I would feel like, ooh, I shouldn't be watching this, but I want to. No.
Yep.
No shame. I watched and enjoyed all of it.
All right. Fair enough. Steve?
I think because some of it gets a bad rap because of its quality, but anything under the wonderful world of Deke, as they would call it,
Oof.
always seemed to be the guilty pleasure because they did Captain N, they did Mario, they did Zelda, so they did all those stuff that I thought catered to me, as well as some other weird shows.
Yeah.
So usually, if it was like during that block and that was the thing you saw the guy out of the bedroom and it just said Deke right on the screen,
Oh yeah.
you were just like, okay, I must have missed a good show or a good show's coming up. And then you'd be like, oh, I love this show. I wonder which episode this is. So it would be like, if they're making it, there's a high chance it's going to be one of my shows. So I would always watch that regardless, no matter how bad they would be. I stayed away from the other ones like Street Fighter or Dock Stalkers
I
because I was
love
just
Street
like,
Fighter.
because I was like, those are more like heckling I do now for the animation mistakes.
Yeah.
But back then it was just like, they went all over the place. I'm sure if I looked up what they did, they did a lot of weird like one-offs too, but I adore them for at least all their Nintendo marketing they tried to do.
Yeah. Kyle.
Yeah, guilty pleasures. Like, I think the only guilty pleasures I can think of is like becoming a fan of a show, but they only last like one season and then get canceled like out of nowhere. Like, Roommates was like on ABC Family, now Freeform. And I watched it because Tamara Mori was in there and ended on such a big cliffhanger that it never got resolved. Like, it seems like in like my last year of high school when it aired, and then Hellcats on the CW that had Ali Mashaka and Ashley Tisdale. And man, that ended on a cliffhanger as well. Like that show started when I first started college. It's like they could make so many good shows, but yet they pulled the plug on them like after the first season. And then another show like on Nickelodeon called How to Rock that had Romeo's little sister, Symphonique. That
Mm-hmm.
was such a good show, and she has such a beautiful voice. It got canceled after one season, and only three of the tracks are only available to listen to. You know, why introduce these great projects and just pull the plug on them? Just why?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
speaking
Okay.
of cliffhangers, real quick, was that Pirates of Darkwater?
Oh
never
my
got your
god.
you never got your conclusion to that. They never found all the treasures. They got 9, and then they're like, canceled. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I will give an honorable mention to like I know like Cartoon Network shouldn't have done this, but those when they would try and do those live actions, like I used to watch that show Bobby Says because Bobby J was like on That's So Raven. And I think those shows would have did better if they were like on a different network. Because like they really are good, but if they're like had a different network to air them, they would have done so much better.
Yeah, because that was the CN Real era, which was not a good era. The only shows that I liked were, I'll say this, like, because they're not my guilty pleasures, but I'll mention that I actually liked Dude, What Would Happen and Destroy Build Destroy. That's it. Anything else? No.
Yeah, they would have done so much better if they were like on a different network.
Yeah.
Their rates would be so much better.
If they would have made like a second network that was dedicated to like anything that's not cartoons, because like they had Cartoon Network and you had Boomerang, but if they would have made another network where it was like Cartoon Network had their own umbrella where it was like game shows or live action stuff, sitcoms and all that, that would have been okay. But to put it on Cartoon Network just takes away the meaning of Cartoon Network. All right. Um, Korshal, what about you? Guilty pleasures.
So there's, especially as a kid, there were two of these were actually already mentioned. I'm about to name three of them, but as just like a little boy being in like grade school, growing up with television, there were shows all the boys watched, but they never spoke to each other that they watched.
Yeah.
The three that I can think of were Powerpuff Girls was one of them that was mentioned. Totally Spies was the second,
Yep.
and My Life as a Teenage Robot was the third.
I love
We
My Life
had
as a Teenage
all
Robot.
three of these girl power fighting shows that we all really liked to watch, but nobody wanted to like point out, like, because we were all under the impression, because thinking you go through a bunch of crap when you're in school with social pressure.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, this is obviously the girl shows. You shouldn't be watching these because it's for like the girl audience. How dare you, right? So, but they were all good. So it's just like, I want to watch all of these because they're all interesting to me. I like all the things the characters are going through. They're actually like emotive, supportive people inside all these shows, and they have good lessons in a lot of them. So it's just like, I really wanted to watch these, and I enjoyed watching them so much at home, but like, you just could not speak about it if you were in just like single digit grade school. This was like off the table to any other kids in the class for some reason. Eventually, we got all old enough where everyone figured out we were all watching the same things. And then like the mask falls off. You're like, oh, why are we all going through this? We don't need to deny ourselves that this is all cool stuff we should watch.
Go ahead.
Sorry, you can go ahead.
No, you first.
But okay, I'm just gonna say, like, it was just this thing where it's just like, if you liked good like female characters who could like kick butt and do action stuff, and it's just like a boy, they're just like, yeah, why do you like Starfire the most in Teen Titans? Like, how dare you? You should just be like Cyborg, Robin, or Beast Boy. And you're like, Starfire has a lot of interesting things going on. She has like some of the most interesting arcs of being the outsider in the group, which is I guess fitting when you're getting ostracized for like watching some of these as a kid. But it's just like, it's less of a guilty pleasure now, because with hindsight, everyone can go like, yeah, these shows were all pretty entertaining and good.
Yeah.
But like back then when they're first coming out, and like especially the 90s and the aughts, very clearly in marketing works to be like, here's the boy camp and here's the girl camp of like, these are the things you should watch, and then here are the things like everyone else should watch. Like, stick to your marketing lane. This is what the corporations want you to be into and want you to watch, sort of deal.
Oh yeah.
Anytime you're like towing near that fence and trying to peek to see the grass on the other side, you're like, should I be doing this? But I kind of like it, so I think I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah. I never got into The Life and Times of Juniper Lee, and I never got into American Dragon Jake Long. But there were so many interesting shows during that era overall. But guilty pleasures, yes, I also watched Totally Spies, but guilty pleasures. Not sure if this counts, but Full House, because I used to watch a lot of Full House back when I was a kid. Like you had Danny Tanner, you had Uncle Jesse, Joey, you had the three daughters, you had DJ, Stephanie, and Michelle. Like Michelle played by the Olsen twins. I used to watch that show a lot growing up, like all 8 seasons, but like the last like season was kind of like eh. But I watched it, but it wasn't really a show that I would talk about like enjoying as a kid at school because like they'll make fun because I was made fun of for liking certain shows as a kid, and Full House was actually one of those shows. Um, I remember watching. Um, there was this one sitcom that I do remember watching. Um, where like there was like this particular girl who it was like a teen show. It was called Blossom. I used to watch that, but I don't remember much about it. It was on NBC. Like it used to come on after Fresh Prince. Um, but I absolutely adored like there was this one other show that I want to bring up. Like I watched Saved by the Bell, but that's not a guilty pleasure for me. I enjoyed Saved by the Bell. But um I watched a lot of Clarissa Explains It All growing up, but that's not really a guilty pleasure. You wonder what was a guilty pleasure? Hey Dude. It was kind of like the weakest of Nickelodeon's sitcoms. It was like Nickelodeon's first sitcom that they've made, but it was like the weakest one. But it was like a bunch of kids in the Wild West, like they had a ranch. That's pretty much what it was, but I enjoyed it. A lot of kids wrote it off for being boring. I didn't think it was boring. I thought it was interesting, but
Enjoyed it.
it was like their first sitcom before we would get Keenan and Kel, before we would get Welcome Freshman, which not many people seem to remember that show. Great show, by the way. Salute Your Shorts was a good one. Um, but if we're gonna be talking about other guilty pleasures, um, I personally think that people really slept on Bo. Not so much of a guilty pleasure, but people really slept on that show. It was on Cartoon Network. It's an anime, but it's one of the most weirdest anime ever, and I love it. Um, I also watched like okay, so we had Pokemon, we had Yu-Gi-Oh, we had Digimon, but there was a show that was about a card game that rivaled Yu-Gi-Oh at the time. It was called Duel Masters. They aired that on Cartoon Network. Um, and it was basically like a way to make it was pretty much Japanese Magic the Gathering. That's pretty much what it was. Ironically enough, Wizards of the Coast published that one. But Yu-Gi-Oh was more successful than that though. Uh the Captain Planet. I love Captain Planet as a kid, so that's a guilty pleasure, I guess. Um but there was so many great shows with great theme songs. Like I got another. I don't know if this counts, but I have one more. Um, there was a show that aired back in the late '90s. It was an action show that I wish had more seasons. Where like there was this kid that somehow managed to get 4 mummies. It was called Mummies Alive. It was a really good show. All right.
I think I know that show. I think I know that show. I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. Um. All right. So, Steve, I'll ask you this one first. How have the shows you've watched during your childhood shaped up your taste? After this, we're going to do the community questions.
Okay, how has it shaped up my taste?
Yeah.
Um, I think overall, even if the like stories or writing was bad, it shaped like what kind of animation styles I liked.
Yeah.
Same thing when it came to the animes I would catch in the beginning, with whether it be Sailor Moon or Pokemon. I would I would be interested in looking to what else have they done. So it kind of followed me that if the animation style stayed that way, I gave it a chance, which got me to watch kind of like all of the Nintendo cartoons that came out, and to at least watch at least an episode or two of the other video game ones, because I was like, oh, they're gonna make cartoons about these.
Mm-hmm.
And then And then I got spoiled by things like Looney Tunes and Batman, which were really well animated. So then when you saw later cartoons like and if there's any fans in the chat, I apologize, but if you see like the like Squidbillies, I was just like, this is not what I grew up with. I grew up with really great animation, and for them to take shortcuts like this, I'll allow it for like Aqua Teen or C Lab because they're trying to just be funny. But when this other one is just like, I don't know, I was just like, it doesn't seem like a lot of work was put into it. So even if the writing's really good, I tell people I don't watch that show because it's just, I don't like the animation.
I don't like Squidbillies. Add that to another show where the moment it was on, I changed channel.
Yeah.
Add that on there. And while we're at it, I never got into Tim and Eric that much, so add that too.
Yeah, for me, and it's ironic, but Tim and Eric and Rick and Morty like went in the same category where I'm like, you guys are getting too weird for me, so I'm gonna watch something else.
Yeah, I used to watch Rick and Morty, but I stopped. What about you, Kyle? Like, how have the shows you watch shaped your taste in overall?
Well, I say like definitely for the anime, it got me to like try out like different try out different like shows like like Sailor Moon and Pokemon helps me like help me introduce like a whole variety of like so many different animes out there, and actually learn like how much deeper that they went and how the original content was before they pretty much like did so much censorship.
Mm,
I feel like it also got me to check out like more like shows that were from like different countries, like Kolyoko was one of them, Totally
yeah.
Spies. And I feel like when I follow up on like what Korshal said about like these different shows, but I think one show like I think I kind of felt ashamed of like watching, but well, not not really ashamed of watching, but of like wanting to bring up was like a show from Italy called The Wings Club. If anyone knows that,
Oh, the Wings Club. I've heard of that one.
yeah,
Nickelodeon
like
owns it
that
now,
was
by
like
the way.
oh, I thought it's like now on Netflix.
Yeah, they air it on
Unless
Netflix,
it's
but
the ownership.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean like that show like just to see like just all those fairies like doing like so much kicking ass, and I like when it had like when it was like on Nickelodeon at the time. Kiki Palmer was on it as well as like Elizabeth Gillies.
Yeah.
Man, and I heard like they're now like rebooting it. And I've
Good
been
for
seeing
them.
like so many clips on Facebook. It's like maybe I should give it another. Maybe I should give that a watch to see how much it evolves because there's just so much that I had no idea that they did
Yeah.
like after the second season.
Well, yeah, of course. Korshal.
So for me, it did a couple of things. Depending on the show we're talking about. One, it gave me an outlet because we're, going back to like talking about the guilty pleasure stuff with like a lot of like the totally spies kind of things. It really let me explore interests or just like things I had a liking towards that I felt like I had no other like source I was comfortable in kind of like figuring out my tastes and preferences.
Mm-hmm.
Because like nowadays I could tell you, oh, I love cute things all the time. And like pink's always been my favorite color, I guess is a little obvious now considering my attire. But
Yep.
like a lot of these were just like as just like um late 90s, early aughts kind of this like kid growing up. There was these things where I know I talked about kind of how there was a lot like corporate marketing where it's like, oh, here's the boys things, here's the girls things.
Yeah.
And like you could even tell back then that like that didn't always make sense because you're just like, I don't fit into like just camp A all the time. Like this can be for anybody. Like it doesn't just have to be, oh, you should only have this. There is so much that like these shows where without the pressure of outside people and you're just allowed to channel surf, you can just like discover things that are super interesting to you and give you a way to really like feel out your sense of self. And you're just like, I think this is what I actually like. And I don't know how to express it yet because I'm just like a wee baby boy and I'm just like processing all these thoughts in my head of like, oh, I want this kind of toy or I want to watch this or play this kind of game.
Yeah.
And there's so much in television that really let me like quietly confirm where I was already heading for when I like hit adulthood. And I was able to go in the stride of like, oh yeah, this is me. This is what I'm about nowadays. But there's so much. I think if I didn't have these kind of shows that I could watch just in the comfort of my own like sense of choice, being that like I don't have to listen to anybody else at school saying watch this or like tune into that. That just being able to discover it by myself and be like, this is for me and I like this really helped kind of like give myself a core that I was able to stick with growing up. And a lot of those tastes have stuck the same beyond the obvious, like, oh, I love all the video game cartoons that I was either slightly too young for, like the just catching the very end of the Deke era of cartoons when I could catch just a little bit of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Mhm.
There was like 1 or 2 episodes of the Super Show that was on when I was really young. I got to catch strays of the Donkey Kong Country cartoon, which is obviously very great, and I love it to death now. But like getting stuff like that, being like, yep, I'm always going to be a Nintendo and like video game person. It gave me a very goofy sense of humor and also very dry sense of humor, depending on the show, because some writing was very good. And like, there were just one liners. I can think of like stuff said in shows like my gym partner's a monkey,
Ooh,
if
I
I remember
that.
that show right, of like some of the really dry, like adult commentary kind of stuff that you're just starting to understand. That gave me some of the like, oh yeah, this is funny because the lawyers threatening to sue and like constantly hounding people is like a very adult experience that like I'm starting to understand. And it really just let me explore myself like as far as I wanted to. And I'm so glad that I kept watching what I was watching, even if I was like, I don't know if other people might think I'm weird for watching Powerpuff Girls. I'm glad I continued to do it up to the point that I went, this is me. This is what I am now. And I'm glad it was there for me to like take those steps. It did a lot. And I know I'm kind of rambling a bit, but it is really important that I was glad that like in a weird way, I'm glad my parents were really hands off with what I watched because like that path for myself, just being like, there wasn't really a lot of internet. Like it was the dial-up days. I couldn't just go online and be like, oh, let's find things that like I can just search for something I might have an interest in. This could be just like, let me just immediately go into like my topic of interest by being able to search stuff up. It's like, no, TV at certain times and certain days on certain channels had just like this sense of adventure stumbling upon these things and going, oh, I got to tune back in on like Tuesday, 4 o'clock because now this is going to be back on and I want more of this to see how I feel about it. There was so
Yeah.
much discovery for that I'm really glad I went through.
All right. Tyler?
Kind of a little bit of a similar sentiment in that, where really the shows that you watch growing up, I feel, really do help shape what you're looking toward and what you enjoy in life later on. I love a good story, and that goes to anything that I like to watch, read, play, or anything nowadays. For example, like I still appreciate a good cartoon. You brought up a more modern thing. I'm going to bring up Owl House. Fantastic show.
Mm-hmm.
Really deserved a lot better than it got, and you know, powers that be at Disney, all that fun.
Yeah.
The little monopoly on
Yeah.
everything entertainment now, and you know, ooh, we don't like how that feels. Nope, nope. Just let people be people, and you know, we got the product that was Steven Universe, and that was wonderful. So let other shows flourish like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the biggest, I've already mentioned it. It's sitting right here. Pokemon is literally like my community, my love, my joy, everything that I really like connect with people over.
Yep.
And really just that filter into the video game realm was a big thing for me because I did not grow up as a young child with games in the house. I didn't have anything until, 10, 11, 12. Got the first Game Boy. Well, right around 10 years old, I got my first Game Boy, which was an advance. Got hand-me-down consoles for my cousins when they got newer ones. So like that is how I started a lot later than a lot of people, I feel. But, Pokemon kind of just filtered right on in, and here I am.
Abs- Yeah, Pokemon's amazing. So, so how did like all these shows shape my overall tastes? By defining the type of person I would be, of course. Well, that's goes without saying, but um trying out different shows, seeing exactly what I would like, what I didn't like. Um and of course, at the end, like my primary interest is video games. So video games for me would end up being something that means a whole bunch to me, and especially watching a bunch of shows growing up that were video game related. Like, I don't remember GamePro TV, but I do remember Video Power. There were 2 seasons of it, where the first season was like half of it was a cartoon where it was kind of like the Captain N, but they called it the Power Team, and the other half was basically tips and tricks of video games and all that. And season 2 was basically a game show, like where video people were playing video games, getting like participating in a competition, winning prizes and all that. But and Nick Arcade was also another one of those. But I've watched anything that had video games growing up back in the day, like especially if Nintendo or Sega, and then later PlayStation, but mainly Nintendo and Sega were around. Because I watched a lot of G4 back in the day. Um, I've watched like the best show in my opinion from G4 was Icons, which at the time was in a half hour you would get a history of like a certain video game topic. I kind of wish they would have made more of them, but they stopped after like 4 seasons, and then like the 5th season was just celebrities. Um, but um, I will say like learning more about video game history is something that meant to me. But same thing with history about my favorite shows and other stuff. Um, I'd be I'd be remiss to say like there was a guilty pleasure I've neglected to mention. Does anyone remember this one show with hamsters called Hamtaro? It was from Japan.
Kentaro time.
Not
We,
yet.
we only got the first 2 seasons, and then they canceled it because apparently, like, they decided Toonami would be the best place to air it when it would have done better on Cartoon Network proper. But Japan, it kept going. Like, it lasted for like it went for like over 200 something episodes. We only got like 100, but Japan just kept going. It's just low ratings and network meddling sabotage the show in North America. Um, but I loved Hantaro so much. Never really got into Crayon Shinshan, but rest in peace to the creator of Crayon Shinshan because he died like unfortunately. Um, let's see, but yeah, like I've at least was open to trying different things and also getting into anime, getting into like game shows, getting into sitcoms and all that. I never got into crime drama. And there were a lot of dramas I did not really get into as a kid, but I would get into later as like a teen or adult. Reality shows will be on all the time. Watching music videos, pretty much anything. I just wanted because I've always thought that variety was a spice of life. You should be able like being able to like pretty much anything you want. Like people would be interested in one specific type of genre of shows, but for me, I have to explore it because I have to know exactly what am I gonna like. So that's what defined me. So community questions time. So uh PK Rocket or Side Squid Kid asks, do you think Kids Next Door could work in this day and age? For example, there's just a lot of things kids don't really do anymore and a lot of jokes that wouldn't fly with people nowadays. Yes, it would still work. I think it would still work. If anything, I think that they should bring the show back. In fact, they tried to bring the show back, but Cartoon Network rejected it. It was called Galactic Kids Next Door, but unfortunately, Cartoon Network doesn't want to bring it back. But it should come back. It could work.
It'd be interesting to see them tackle like more modern issues.
Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely think it would. Like, so the obviously the idea of it is that it's kids exploring things that aren't necessarily like just for them, and like their own interpretation of what a lot of like things in the world that might be, you know, a little dense to explain. I really love the show being a way to like put a silly kind of like satirical spin on some certain like aspects of life that you're just like, well, if you're a kid watching the adult go in and out of like their day to day, or like, what does this all mean? Like, why are they doing this when this is clearly a waste of their time? There's got to be some larger like conspiracy as to why we have to do this like crummy thing, like this responsibility. And nowadays, with how much media has changed, I definitely feel like that show would be ripe for a new standard. And granted, like a lot of it now, like internet culture is so big, and I think that would have to be a very big part of the show. If you could almost code Lyoko-ify Kids Next Door and have it
Kids
be
next
like
door.
Nope.
a exploration of this like internet culture, and so much connection is done through online nowadays, you can do some sort of weird like dichotomy of how much you get to explore through the online world and what they take as like entertainment or like explaining things or like meme culture, and also have that be like what happens when they're outside of that web, like outside of the net, and like how that reflects on the world around them, where they could take it one way or another of like, oh, I see all this online and this is how I feel about this, and you step outside and you're like, I now have my explanation for why this thing happens in the real world, and I got it from the internet. I got it from my like online hangout of all my other kids in the neighborhood. We've deduced why this thing happens. It must be this. And we put our heads together and our technology to like decipher this.
Yeah.
And it I feel like there's so many good possibilities you could do with that.
Way too many possibilities. You just never know what they can come up with.
Kids next door versus the brain rot virus.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Steven, were you ever into codenamed Kids Next Door?
I would just catch it here and there. I really didn't get into it that much because I've seen now through like my algorithms through like stuff like TikTok or YouTube, I see the darker sides of it, but I also grew up with stuff like Courage the Cowardly Dog, which like some of those episodes would just like, wait, there's people that actually do that, and then you find out those people exist in real life sometimes.
They did, yeah.
But I think it could still be done today because there's still shows that, you know, will sneak in even stuff for us that, such as like Phineas and Ferb, will do tons of stuff that might go over a lot of kids' heads, but not ours, or just like, you know, even looking back at like Dexter's Laboratory, even they did stuff that you're like, oh, okay. As an adult, I get what they were saying.
Yeah, the Rocko's Modern Life did the same thing on Nickelodeon. Like Nickelodeon was pretty much like filled with that, like a lot of jokes that went way over our heads. Some of which, unfortunately, was disgusting looking back. But yeah, like it was pretty common back in the 90s and like 2000s where they would do stuff like that. Like they would manage to get away with stuff you would never thought they would get away with. Or like cover topics. Like, because I want to bring up that Nickelodeon does not really like covering the topic of death. Cartoon Network wasn't afraid. And you want to know what's one example of that? There was an episode of the Powerpuff Girls. Actually, no. Well, I'll bring up one example from Nickelodeon, but I felt like Powerpuff Girls handled it better. So, the Powerpuff Girls example, there was an episode where there was the fourth Powerpuff Girl named Bunny that the girls created, and then she ended up like, and then afterwards it just the girls created her, rejected her, but then she saved all three of them, and then she died. And the way they handled death, because I felt like just at least not being afraid to tackle the concept of death was fascinating, because usually they dance around it. Nickelodeon, if I had to think of an example of this, there was a Rugrats episode called I Remember Melville where Chucky had a pet bug named named Melville. He used to play with it. Then at one day, the bug died, and he went through the stages of grief with death. And then after when he finally accepted it, they held a funeral for the bug. Which the fact that babies were actually able to do that was impressive even back then, like in '94 when I first watched that episode. But Nickelodeon otherwise would tend to dance around death, and Cartoon Network used to not really be afraid to talk about it because at some point kids are gonna know about it and they're gonna have to experience it. But at the same time, it's just a matter of how we deal with it. But yeah, um,
I think the darkest Nickelodeon ever got was that Ren and Stimpy special that they had to do late at night, where Stimpy had to go after his fart, so to speak.
that was the Christmas one. I remember that. Yeah,
That ran away from home. They went all out in terms of emotional though, so that was like trying to do a dark route in a silly way, but it was still like we
yeah.
can't air this during normal times because it's dealing with darker subjects.
It's one of those things
yeah.
where it's yeah, because they had like a trade back then where it's like you could do the gross out stuff, but you also need to do the heartwarming stuff, and then that's how they managed to do both. But what happened, Kyle?
Yeah, but to piggyback on what you said, like I know like Nickelodeon also like handled like the topic of death like with there's this episode I remember of as told by Ginger when Dodie and Hoosie's like grandmother died, and I think they showed like different like views of like one where like really hurt someone and the other was like they didn't really care. So like Ginger like as told by Ginger like they knew how to hit the heavy topics like really hard.
I love That's Told by Ginger, but I'm just gonna say this right now. There's one character in that show I absolutely hated because she was such a terrible friend, and that character is Dodie Bishop. She was
Yeah.
a she's basically that friend who will instantly backstab you. That's what she was. She'll backstab you.
Her and Miranda like Cree Summer's the best, but like man, Miranda's such a bitch.
But like, I mean, like that show went a lot. Like, I wish they could have done more with that show. The Soul by Ginger was very good. Dari asks, what kids shows were better? Because there was a point where USA Network actually had cartoons for a while, which let's see, it was USA, ABC, NBC, Fox, UPN. There was also the Kids WB. Or do you prefer like the stuff like Cartoon Network, Disney, Nickelodeon? Because that's the thing. Nickelodeon was like super high tier for me when I was a kid. Same thing with Cartoon Network. They were like don't get me wrong. Like the local channels, like the Fox Kids, ABC, and all that, they had some really good shows. You couldn't compete with Nickelodeon back then or Cartoon Network. You couldn't compete with them. Or Disney Channel if you had it. What do you guys think?
Well, when your entire network's dedicated to children's shows, it's easier to retain viewership. Yeah. And then you're going to build the camaraderie of, oh, well, I like all of these shows, and depending on which network you're on watching at that time. So yeah, you can't compete with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I'm in agreement. Like, I did just have my spiel a little earlier saying that like I knew my like go-to 3 channels of like Toon Disney, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network. And that's definitely where I lean, where it's just like if that stuff was on offer all the time, like at least like one of these 3 would be available for me to go to at like any point I was awake in childhood, even as like the Nick at Night and the Adult Swim kicked in. You're like, well, there's still the Disney, so I can go watch that. And it was just like a never-ending drip feed of stuff. And like if I wasn't having my game consoles on, I was watching one of these 3 channels almost all the time, with my noted exception of the Fox box. And it's just like that definitely has it there for me. It's like if it's always there for me and I know where it is, it's easy to get to, and I know there's at least something between the 3 of them for me to watch at any point in the day, that gets my vote.
Yep.
Yeah, Cartoon Network, Disney, and Nickelodeon were definitely like the more top tier ones.
Yeah, you're just gonna compete.
Yeah. Same for me. It was just because I was, when I was watching all these shows, I didn't have a Toonami. I didn't have a Cartoon Network really to fall back on. I didn't even have Boomerang. So for me, it was just Disney was number one in terms of the amount of cartoons. Nickelodeon, if you hit them at the right time, you got their block. Because of course Disney Afternoon as well, and because you'd come home and watch DuckTales and stuff like that. So for me, it was just those two always competing for me, and then other than that, it was like which network just touted their cartoons for CBS Saturday mornings or Fox Saturday mornings, because they didn't have anything called the block or anything. They were just like, here's the latest Scooby Doo or something. And I'm like, no, I don't want to Scooby Doo. I want to see what these other guys have, because back then you couldn't just watch all of Hanna-Barbera somewhere. You had to switch between certain networks. So for me, it was a little bit different, but Disney kind of eclipsed all that for me.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So next one is from Dragonflame. Do you think that children's TV shows nowadays are any bit as good as they were in the 90s or 2000s, or have they lost the magic? It really, really depends on the show. There's a lot of shows that are not really that good, but there are some shows that are still good. I personally haven't really been watching too much of modern television lately because I don't really have TV. And I pretty much cut off a lot of my streaming services for one reason or another. Mostly it's budget, but I have my own personal reasons for others. But for something I did see some more recent stuff. I did see clips of shows I didn't get to watch much for the modern stuff, but I did see that they're really good. Like I did see like how DuckTales looked like for the more modern ones. I thought that one looks really good. Owl House, I still gotta watch that, but I've heard great things about that one. Um, I've heard great things about Star versus the Forces of Evil, except for the finale. Um, the last show that I've seen from start to finish that was like more modern, at least it was modern at the time it came out, Gravity Falls. I did see that from start to finish. That was probably like one of the last shows I seen from start to finish, because there were shows that that I've seen that came before it that I never finished, came after it, never even started. But it just depends on the show. So so it's 50-50. Yes for some shows, no for others. That's my answer.
Yeah, I think it
Also,
comes down to me when are the new shows better? It's comes down to is it something original, or are they just trying to reboot something to bring in two audiences? And if you're going to reboot something, you got to respect the lore, or at least feed us something we want. Like there's too many cases where, He-Man went in the wrong direction, or Thundercats looked too much like Steven Universe, so people were like, I don't get what you're doing with the artwork here. Or Teen Titans went from being a nice dark show that
Oh
we
my
loved to being
god.
too silly sometimes. Where I was like, maybe you guys are going overboard on some things. Thankfully we didn't get the meme worthy Powerpuff Girls, because it just didn't seem to really click with anybody to be that weird. But then like you said, we get good original stuff. We get Gravity Falls, and we get stuff like Owl House and Infinity Train and all those other ones that like come and go before you even get a chance to watch them, unfortunately, because Warner Brothers hates money.
Yeah, they do.
But it's like that. You either respect the old stuff if you're going to reboot it, but there's going to be these things that you're going to be able to tell nowadays, especially unfortunately with the introduction of AI. You're going to be able to tell when they're trying to make a quick buck.
That was one of my points. AI is going to wreak havoc over the entire industry. But additionally, there seems to also be a spectrum of target audience. The older target audience you're going for with your show, be it a reboot, original, or whatnot. So, like, if you're looking at those, like, 10, 11, 12, or young teens, those seem to do better. The young childhood stuff is just rapid color changes, brain rot. It is so bad now. Like, little kid TV shows have taken a nosedive.
They have. Like, you see stuff like...
And that's, like, a very distinct difference. That when you read the question, the first thing I thought of was the stuff I see children in the grocery store watching their iPad, like, just flashing colors in their face. It's not good.
I'm going to name one prime example of that, of brain rot, Cocomelon. Yeah. Oof. Kyle, do you have anything to contribute regarding like shows from like now that are like as good as like the ones like the 90s, 2000s, or even the 80s?
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of like a broad term. That's pretty much like a broad question because I feel like every generation will say the same thing about like shows that we used to watch in, and we say the same thing about what they used to watch. It's like every generation will say something about every other generation, where pretty much like when I watch like the Disney Channel, like Hannah Montana, Wizards, That's Our Raven, those was my generation. But then we got shows like Liv and Maddie, Austin and Ally, that's a whole other generation,
Yeah.
and then Girl Meets World, another generation. So it's like a whole different generations of who they're targeting. So it's like they may say we might say it's bad, but then like 10 years later, like they'll say like our shows are bad. It's like no like real clear answer of like if it's like bad or it's just not in our taste anymore.
Korshal?
So I don't get to watch a whole lot of new like television that's just straight up on networks now because I also don't have cable anymore. So it's just like through what little cultural osmosis that I can kind of absorb through the internet that my like friends talk about, or just like little clips I get to see. And I have seen some like good things there. I definitely feel like there are good people trying to make good shows out there. I would say definitely yes. If our bar is, are they any bit at all? Is there still like the creative spark of trying to make things that are like a little more in depth, can encourage more thoughts and explorations of like thoughts and feelings kids might have that they wouldn't know how to like otherwise express, that they might not have felt these things yet up to this point in terms of like having a good narrative lesson or something. I definitely think there is. I also think we kind of touched on it with like AIs being an example. Just at least as like a full grown adult now, it's much clearer to me how much boardroom meddling and like corporate just like checkboxes can go into some of these like slots they have, or we're talking about things getting canceled too soon, or like they see any little bit of like some manufactured like social media storm about a pushback on something, and then just like the boardroom CEOs will just fold on this kind of stuff where they'll just be like, yeah, I don't know if this is really a thing we want to do because there's some very loud small group of people saying like don't do this now, and then they just shut it down, or they like have impossible standards of graph must always go up. We didn't hit this part of like our viewership. Pull the plug, even though it was doing absolutely all right. And there's people who are very dedicated to the message they're trying to give, who are clearly passionate. Cut it, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like, the, yeah, I know it's because there's like 1,000 different ways for people to view content now. So like they're all desperate to try to get any maximum retention sort of thing to like justify putting resources. And they're so afraid of making new things because we can tell like nostalgia culture is very much a thing right now for us of like the 90s and the aughts, because it's like everyone our group making things they remember or things based off of stuff they remember. And like there can be just that hesitancy to go and try to like make new things or like continue making new things when you just have like CEOs breathing down your neck that like, oh, like we just did this merger and now we have to like pay off this debt. Who knew that getting bought out would just give your studio more debt? Sorry, it's time to cut part of the animation team and stuff like that. And it's just like, capitalism kind of sucks.
Yes,
And I
yes.
think it wasn't for its greedy little fingers sticking into the pot, we would see way more better stuff like we used to, just because there's far less overall, at least from like major networks, far less like broad freedom compared to where I think like the 90s and thousands. You, within reason, as long as you could get it past the TV censors, some creators were allowed just to go wild with the type of stuff they did.
Yeah.
And it feels like you get less of that now because like the people higher up are way more afraid of like they have to stick to a certain thing. Like same thing could be said with movies with like the sequel-itis kind of like
Oh
reboots or
boy.
constant sequels.
It's every industry now.
Yeah.
Look at theme parks. Disney has not put in a single new attraction not based on an existing IP since Expedition Everest in 2004.
Yep.
So yeah, that kind of thing. I can feel it now. You can feel that there's that suppression of, I think, people who really want to create new good stuff. And you see it through like Kickstarters or just like small time indie channels doing their own like passion project animation. I know these people are out there. They're just not being given a chance by the people with the most money. And that's really disappointing to see.
Yeah, exactly. What makes me really angry is the fact that every time people are gonna have the best ideas they could possibly come up with, and then you got like these guys, these angry CEOs, you could tell they're red in the face and scream at you, curse at you, because they want you to do something they want you to do, not what you want to do. And what pisses me off about this is we're losing creativity. Kids should be able to grow up watching shows to explore and find something that resonates with them, not something that's brain rot just to distract them because their parents. There's kids with parents who unfortunately are too busy to watch their own children, and instead they want to go out of their way to just distract their kids with like some sort of babysitting tool or what have you. And and whenever like they see something they don't like, they get offended, they get angry, they yell, and people would tell you, and then like whenever I call people like that out, I'm like, why do you care about what I do? And I'm like, look, I'm not a parent, I'm not pretending to be one, but you're not a good parent. I'm seeing what you're doing with your kids. Like, their kids are watching these shows that don't make any sense. There's no creativity. There's no story. There's nothing compelling about it. Let them watch some shows that have some good storytelling, good characters, good plot. Even if it was something from like the 80s, 90s, 2000s, it's better than anything. It's better than anything that would be made by computers. So, fuck AI, fuck generative AI. Get them actual shows.
That's... Like, you want your kids to ask questions. You know, I was raised on stuff like Mr. Wizard, so yes. I asked questions. I watched Beakman's World. I asked questions like, how does this work? What do you mean this stuff? And because of Beakman's World, then when as an adult you get a show like Mythbusters, then you're just like, okay, this is more stuff that'll make me ask questions. This is great.
Exactly.
So, those are the best shows.
Exactly. Like, it's sad how like where this is all going right now. Like, kids deserve to have something better than what they already have. That's just that. All right. Next question, because I know like I could ramble about this all day if I wanted to, but next question. And this one is for Professor Icepick. Do you normally stick to one channel on Saturday mornings or play the field? I used to play the field. I used to watch a lot of shows from different networks because I wanted to see what this network had. And if it has something I don't like, change the channel to maybe see if there's something I do like. It's plain and simple. So, but Saturday mornings growing up, it was mainly like I started with NBC and CBS, then I pivoted to ABC and Fox, and then like around 99 was when I switched over to Kids WB, and you wonder what's the reason I switched over to Kids WB? Pokemon. So, and then I've been Kids WB up until 2006, when they took Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh out and some other shows that I liked. So, yeah. So, it was mainly, so I flipped around. What about you guys?
So also to date myself, every Sunday when my parents would get the newspaper, they would actually include a TV guide in it. So not the TV guide that you'd have to read through articles and stuff that people might have remembered, but it was just like a pamphlet that basically just had the listings for every day. And I played the field because as a kid, I would go on to Saturday and see, oh, are they airing what I want to watch? And I'd have to like circle like or write down like, okay, at 6 a.m. it's gonna be Sailor Moon. I get a break at 6:30 because I'm not watching Dragon Ball. But then at 7 I have to go over and watch Looney Tunes, and then I have to go to Disney, and then I have to go to Fox. So I would actually play the field because I would like kind of have like a battle plan of what to watch because I'd be like,
Yep.
okay, when do I get to stop? Okay, American Gladiators coming on. There's no more cartoons after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would play the field as well too, because like Kids WB and the Fox Box, they were all always like air my favorite shows at the same time. So I had to like see like what times that each channel was airing what show, so I can know like when to switch.
I'd say for me, I was largely like a 4 kids TV Fox box kind of guy. Like so it had my game shows I wanted, and it had like Yu-Gi-Oh on it for a bit. I got very small exposure to Ultimate Muscle, which is now a really funny dub now that I really like.
Oh boy.
The so like 4 Kids Studio knew how to make marketing that worked and appealed to kids of the era. Like we can think of their opening songs they all wrote themselves, and admittedly, like goofy lyrics or not, they're all really catchy. They knew how to make those things stick out. And you'd always just be like, yeah, I gotta watch like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We can all think of the line, the classic pun, it's one shell of a time, has never left my mind of that opening. There's a lot of 4 Kids written openers where I can recall so much. Like the One Piece rap is pretty famous from them too. And you're just like, yeah, they knew how to keep my focus on there. When I woke up Saturday morning, I knew this was my one chance and like one reason to tune into this specific channel and break away from my Disney, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network like little pantheon. And they always made it worth it with like the silly little things they did.
Mm-hmm.
I also just bounced around, as I've already said. Anything and everything was my taste. I had to balance out with my younger sister, so we took our turns.
Kyle?
Oh, I think I already did answer that.
Oh, you did answer that. Sorry. Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next one is from Epic Man. What would be your dream channel? A channel that has all the shows you want despite where they're from? That's a loaded question. And the thing is, that's hard for me to answer because there's so many different types of shows and it's just trying to figure out how to fit everything in. But I don't think I can answer this question because of how hard it really is. So
Cheesy answer.
Go
The
ahead.
answer is it exists. It's the internet. I can watch anything I want at any time.
true.
So it makes me think of like a memory I used to have way like when the idea of streaming was really like a wild west, and like there wasn't nearly as much strict copyright monitoring as there is nowadays, and we all have to be extremely careful of like what you show or how much of a thing you might show. There were times where I remember friends would just like go on their streaming platform, like the super pre-Twitch kind of days, and just be like, I'm gonna show 4 hours of like these cartoons I definitely have normally for normal reasons, and like we can all hang out and watch it. And I was thinking like, man, if you could just do that nowadays, and just like if I could just cycle all my goofy like, especially early dubbed like gamed like cartoon or anime stuff like we were talking about, if I had to just like go, there's only 24 hours in the day, and this is what I'm choosing to do, I would still really love being able to continually give people a good way to access some of the older, like hulkier game media that we were discussing about for the cartoons. Because I honestly think a lot of them are still pretty funny and hold up in their own ways, or at least are good enough to like chuckle at and have like a nice little nostalgic view. And if you mix that up with just showing like some of Ooh, yeah, definitely like a give me a way to like run many video game movies that were from like the 90s, like interspersed around the television shows. And we're talking about like the old Mortal Kombat movie alongside Conquest. Give us our like, yeah, see, this is all a little goofy, but we can still appreciate it for like where it was and what it's doing now. And it might give people more appreciation to have an easier access to like we're talking about Super Mario Bros. Super Show. Like, imagine a world where you could have that show still air with the original songs they licensed to play in their episodes. I remember one I don't remember the exact song, but there was a VHS of the Super Show that I used to rent from the library a lot. That was like the cowboy episode that had the boulder rolling down this spiral mountain, and they played just like a licensed Western song that in modern media, like DVD releases, they had to cut it and stick in like a generic backtrack from the Super Mario Brothers 3 cartoon. But imagine like a way I could have a network where you could let all these old license agreements go, where people can still like experience the full context of what this show was supposed to be before it had to be edited for a modern release, as license and copyright laws are always shifting, forcing people to change up what the original intent of what like a show could have been if it used the licensed song. So I want something like that. Let me play some of these really old unedited stuff as they were supposed to be as they first did it, and then let us just enjoy what it was compared to like all the finagling people do now.
Yeah, I think for a dream channel of mine, while there is one that's trying to exist, and it's called Me TV Tunes, because they've reached out to like all the license holders and saying like, can we air your stuff? So they've gotten everything from Smurfs to Ninja Turtles to the real Ghostbusters. I think for my personal dream channel, I would have probably the stuff that's more cringy to some as my early block. So I'd have Wonderful World of Beats, I'd have Captain N, I'd have Ruby Spears cartoons and stuff like that. But then towards the night, you have the other cartoons like Invincible or or something a lot darker. That you can just be like, okay, now that I'm done watching the stuff I can't watch with friends, because they might just be like, "Why do you watch this?" And you have to answer all those questions. Is you have the more acceptable cartoons towards the end that are just like the fan favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I say like my dream channel, like I think it already exists. Like back in the 2000s, like the day of iTunes, just buying these episodes and be able to watch them like on your iPod wherever you go. Like that was my dream channel. Like even having easy access to these shows whenever.
Exactly. Just being able to watch whatever you want, when you want it, and where you want to watch it at.
Yeah.
Like I remember remember a time when Netflix had like everything, and I remember when Netflix first launched on the 3DS, and this was before I had a smartphone. Just being able to watch Netflix on the 3DS wherever I wanted to was wild. I thought it was the best thing at the time. But it's like, um, I honestly feel like it's really hard for me to answer like this question. But if I had to actually, I did come up with something though. Personally speaking, um, all Nickelodeon needs to do is make a channel dedicated to classic Nickelodeon. Except they kind of already did that. Um, they took the channel which is the N or Noggin, and then like at night they would have the 90s or all that, but then they changed it to the Splat. Um, but the problem is it was a premium channel. Not everybody had it. So um next one is from Sammy G. What childhood TV shows that you loved before do y'all think will not age well today, and why? Ren and Stimpy does not age well. Ren and Stimpy does not hold up well whatsoever because of the crude humor and the jokes they had. I also think that older South Park does not hold up well. Especially older South Park does not hold up well.
I would say older Looney Tunes, because even the DVDs have to warn you in the beginning it was a product of the times.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The
say, like,
older it is, the more likely it's cancelable nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say pretty much like anything on Nickelodeon that was made by that infamous creator, especially after watching that whole Quiet on Set documentary. Yeah, did
Yeah,
not age at all. Did not age well at all.
Yeah.
the main show
The
that was ruined for me was the Amanda Show.
mm,
I can't watch that show anymore.
there's
Really hard to go back to
it's
that one.
one, I don't think it's as bad, but I feel like kind of in the spirit of things, I would feel like, oh, maybe this isn't quite as I remember it. I know I have good memories of it, but I think about like the era of like some of the things of Fairly Odd Parents, and I like realize a lot of its humor is pretty punch down y. Like it just threw jabs at different types of people. I mean, there was the 2000s overall, like misogynistic humor was pretty common
Oh
to
yeah,
happen. And you think about that, where it's just like, I have some pretty good memories of the show, but I recognize that like some of that humor and some of those people were not afraid just to like punch down in certain groups of people as like the butt of the joke pretty often. And that
yeah,
was just like normal American media. That was like our humor of going like, wow, they're different. Haha. And you're just like, all right. Yeah, it's not the worst type of thing compared to the other named examples that are like really terrible bad. But I still think I'd see some of it now and just be like, okay, that's more mean spirited than I think it needed to be with some of this.
yeah. And to be honest, like there were shows where I've watched where there were shows that I used to like in general, and then I cringe at many of the jokes, and especially when there was like, yeah, like there was a lot of misogynistic stuff, but then like seeing a lot of jokes where people were punching down on like the LGBTQ communities, which I'm like, yeah, that does not fly at all today for sure. Um, like I think there were some creators who like for some shows that later apologized for some of the stuff, and I know like Family Guy, they did apologize for that eventually. Um, but it's one of those things where so many things do not hold up back then, and so they were really good jokes back then, but they're definitely not good jokes now. They're not, because they're not really funny. But some shows, unfortunately, it's hard to go back to watching because of certain themes. Um, Noble Boy asks, which childhood show you love a lot but is often being overlooked or forgotten, and why you think people should give the show like um a, a watch once.
So say I know it was mentioned earlier, but for my sake in that, I actually need to rewatch it myself because I was thinking about it going into this when I saw that question. Is I want to be on the camp of the Code Lyoko rewatch club. Let's all go back to that because I don't remember the name of the block, but there was like the not quite as like older teenage focused Tanami block. Like it was called something else, but it would
Are you talking about
happen like,
Maguzi?
yeah, is that it? Like they had their own like not Tanami around like 4 p.m. every day. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember Code
that was
Lyoko.
Maguzi. They were like in this like
Okay.
they were like underwater in this like little
Yeah.
like that helps. Yeah, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly that. And I remember that and being like, I see every now and again, I hear occasional murmurs of Code Lyoko, but at least in like my network before I was like getting to hear about it talk today, I just feel like it wasn't really touched upon very much. And I know like it's obviously got that old CGI kind of look from the digital world being the like 3D animated segments. But I feel like it was always pretty good. Like that's what my brain tells me. So I feel like we should all go really like watch a cohesive little narrative and get to watch like a very memorable time in 3D animation space as well. Like, I feel like it's a really intriguing time capsule that should be watched and appreciated nowadays.
Yep. Like
My answer too.
uh
Surprise.
yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Megas XLR, but there's like a bunch of other overlooked shows. And why I think people should give it a watch once. I honestly feel like there was this one show that was on Nickelodeon that was extremely overlooked that I wish had a lot more attention than even SpongeBob. Believe it or not. Um, I feel like Nickelodeon really screwed the fucking pooch with Danny Phantom.
Oh, yeah.
Like it came out in 2004, it had 3 seasons. They screwed the fucking pooch with that show. Just like they did with My Life as a Teenage Robot. They pretty much did that with any show that wasn't SpongeBob or Fairly Odd Parents. But those were the 2 examples. I never got a chance to watch El Tigre, but people say that one's another example. Yeah, I heard that the finale of Danny Phantom was bad. But and also pretty much like there was a lot of Cartoon Network shows that fit this bill too. One of the big like another one I would probably mention like that I used to watch that was overlooked. Like in addition to the sea of the popular shows like Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, Courage, Kids Next Door, Billy Mandy, and all those shows, there was a show that was attached to Billy and Mandy that got overlooked. Evil Con Carne, very underrated. Never really got a chance to get off the ground. Billy and Mandy was the more popular of the 2 because originally it was Grim and Evil, but then like they split the 2 shows, and then like it was Billy and Mandy that became the more popular of the 2. And one other show that I could bring up, I feel like Disney. So with Disney screwing the pooch on so many different shows, they fucked up so hard when with Recess. It could have gone a little bit longer, but I felt that the problem is Disney used to have this rule in which there are a few exceptions to this rule, but if a show would hit 65 episodes, that's it. They were done, regardless of how popular it was. Not Recess was definitely not overlooked, but it ended too soon. It was more like that was more like how a show ended too soon. All right, Steve.
So, for me, I think some of these shows some of these new shows or revivals sometimes can ruin somebody's outlook or create a stigma for some older shows. And when I say that, you look at something like I think it was Looniversity. Is you want to go back and you should watch Tiny Toons because that was done really well. They got a lot of the original Looney Tunes voice actors to reprise their roles. Granny was still alive back then too, so it was just a great show. And then you could look at this new one where they're in college, and it's like, no, it's lost some of its magic. But please go back and watch it. And similarly, I tell people like, I I grew up with regular Scooby Doo, but there's something inherently Phineas and Ferby about a pup named Scooby Doo that has a lot more, for me, better humor. So if you don't like some of the drier humor of the original Scooby Doo's or even these other revivals, go to a pup named Scooby Doo. It's actually funnier than you think with some of the jokes they put in there, especially some of the running gags, because there's not a lot of cartoons nowadays that can do a good running gag. Like
Yeah.
Flintstones did the It's a Living when they had their different appliances, and Pup Named Scooby Doo had Red Herring, which was like as an adult you get even now what red herring means, and you're like, oh, this is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell people like check those out. It's better than you think, especially when you understand some of the jokes they're doing.
Yep. Kyle?
Yeah. Well, one of my show I did mention earlier, like Ned's Declassified. I'll say like Unfabulous is another one because like those were like some solid good shows, but because they weren't under like the creator, they were like overlooked and not really like talked about that much. Yeah, but I definitely enjoyed those shows because of like the messages they gave, like especially with all those tips that Ned gave. Like we need like a guide to like adulthood. Like we definitely something we definitely need.
Oh, we definitely do.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like another show that's probably like overlooked is like the Looney Tunes show.
Yes.
I feel like maybe if it was like aired like at a different era, it would probably would have done better. Because like maybe because like the timing that it aired like probably wasn't like the best timing.
Yeah. Um. Next one. The next question is from Nova. Nova the artist. Favorite cartoon from Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, or Disney Channel? If you didn't watch one or two of those networks, throw an extra Nickelodeon cartoon show. Like, let's see. So Disney Channel, I actually experienced the least because for the longest time it was a premium channel until the 2000s. But then by the time that it was a channel that was on regular cable, I wasn't watching it as much because I was mainly focused more on Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network. So um that being said, I personally think the best show from Nickelodeon is Rocko's Modern Life. Especially if it was a cartoon, Rocko's Modern Life. Live action sitcom, Keenan and Kel. Game show for Nickelodeon, probably either Guts or Legends of the Hidden Temple. Or the original Double Dare. Um, but I also like Are You Afraid of the Dark? Cartoon Network, uh, Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Bravo, Dexter's Lab, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Kids Next Door, um, just to name a few. You guys can come up with whatever you want.
I'd say probably from Nickelodeon, like Rocket Power is definitely like one of them. Like it
Oh,
actually
Rocket
inspired me to like
Power.
want to learn skateboarding. Note to self, don't try to learn skateboarding when you live in an area that's like all hills. You will not do well. I tried it and I just did not go back to skateboarding ever since. I'd say from I'd say like from Disney, like I feel like the earliest one I can remember is like Kim Possible. Just like being a high schooler and doing like all this kick ass stuff, like man, how does I wish I was like him doing all those cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say like from Cartoon Network, like it's definitely a tie between the Powerpuff Girls and Hi Hi Puffy Ami Yumi.
Oh,
Because because like that's like that show like it's like introduced me like to like so many different genres of music. Like I have two of their CDs and I go back to listen to them and man, they're just bops.
Oh
Especially
yeah,
since like the especially since the band like they did the theme song for Teen Titans. Like that's just fucking amazing.
the Teen Titans is incredible.
Yeah.
Tyler?
Okay. I'm just trying to think. Disney's, I mean, Disney's a tough one. I will go with the Adventures of Lilo and Stitch for that. Loved that show.
All
Which
right.
also that fits quite a few other of the questions, like something that people should give a watch, something that deserved better, all of the above. Love that. Jimmy Neutron, and then Cartoon Network. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends.
Yes. Good show.
No problem.
Steve?
I think for me, if we're going Cartoon Network, it was basically anything that, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Gendy Tartovsky did.
Yeah.
So whether it be Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Laboratory, there's the only place you could watch those really. So that was the go-to if you were on Cartoon Network. For me, Disney, they already had my day planned because they had the original like Donald Duck and the Goofy shorts in the mornings, and then they had the Disney afternoon that kind of controlled my whole day. And then I think Nickelodeon is a little bit weirder. I think for me it was more the game shows, so it was more like Nick Arcade and Double Dare that kept me tuning into Nickelodeon overall.
Yeah. Korshal.
all right. So for like Disney cartoon stuff, I have very fond memories of Goof Troop. Goof Troop was a show I really liked. I mean, all of the like movie tie-in kind of shows had a lot of good pluses, but I was always a big fan of Goof Troop, and it really helped cement my love for the character of Pete. And especially you think about the voice performances that Jim gives as Pete are like some of my favorite things. Pete is just like the best rat of a character, and like everything that is done with Pete that spawned off of that. From like you think about like his performance and personality in like the Kingdom Hearts series as well is very like practiced in from this like the sleazy car salesman of Goof Troop, and like there's some also pretty funny plots with that. I went watching that show not too long ago again just to see again. I was like, man, this is still really good. For Nickelodeon, I'd have to think about that one a little. I actually did like once you spawned Danny Phantom back into my brain, I was like, man, yeah, that show was really good. So I honestly think that or Teenage Robot were like the ones that I really liked the most. And I remember really well stinking Vlad from Danny Phantom just being like a Wisconsinite. That that weird running gag of him just being like a Wisconsin guy and like knowing cheese and butter was like dairy was a thing that stuck in me.
Yep.
And then since we keep lining up on these, so here's a another share to answer with T Golem would be Foster's was going to be my pick as well. I watched that show so much whenever it was on. I have this really weird, distinct memory that I knew some of the episodes so well. There was the cookie sale episode that came up, and like I knew that enough. There was one time I fell asleep watching television and that episode came on, and because I could hear it in my sleep, I thought I was there in the episode, like with the characters as they were doing their thing. And because I had seen it, I knew where this was going. I was like, this all goes bad, Blue. You need to stop this. And my little kid dream mind could not understand why no one was listening to me, and that things just kept playing out the same exact way I already knew from I had seen the episode. So like that's proof that I really liked Foster's, and Will was like the best character. Another role model. He was the sweetest guy in the world. And I was like, I just want to be more like this funny basketball player because he's really sweet and really sensitive and a great guy to be.
Yeah. All right, we got one more question before we wrap things up. So this one is from Cutie Caitlin. Was there a show you found out about later in life that you know you would have loved as a kid? Ooh, that's a good question. That's a tough one. Let's see. I would probably have to say that I think I would have appreciated I think I would have appreciated Samurai Jack a whole lot more, even though I watched on and off. But I think I would have appreciated a lot more if I would have just kept watching consistently. Like, same thing with Avatar The Last Airbender. I didn't watch the whole show on Nickelodeon. I watched it on Netflix. I think I would have liked it a lot more if I would have stuck with it when it first aired. And the only other show that I'm going to bring up that fits this bill, I honestly feel like if I would have known just how good, if I honestly just would have known how good of a show, here, this is going to be a deep cut. Not sure how many people here are going to remember this show. There was a show called Duckman. I've seen it much later on. Duckman was a show that was created by Klasky Supo, or rather, no, Everett Peck. Klasky Supo did the art. Duckman was based off a comic book. It aired on the USA Network, and reruns were aired on Comedy Central. Jason Alexander voiced him. It was a really good show. I did not really watch enough of it when I was a kid. I wasn't sure what to think of it. But as I got older, I found out about the show again. I loved it. And I wish I would have watched it like when it first started airing back in like 94 to 97. Very underrated show. Uh Feel free to answer this one, you guys. Shows that you found out about later in life that you would have loved as a kid.
Yeah, not sure if this would count because like I watch it like every now and then when it was on, but like I say like if I watch it like as a teenager, I probably would appreciate As Told by Ginger a lot more because like when it first came on, like I was like still like in elementary school, so all the topics that they're talking about like I did not understand at all. But I think like if I would watch it like when I was like much older, I probably would understand it a lot better. Yeah, because like same like with Rugrats, like I watched it like as a kid, but as I was like becoming like a teenager, all grown up, like I was liking it a lot more. So I think like if As Told by Ginger came out at the same time as All Grown Up, I probably would appreciate the show a lot better.
Yeah.
I'd say for me, I mentioned on this briefly because I like barely watched it as a kid, but now I've seen it all as an adult, and I realized there's like two coins of this that I would have really liked. Is I want to once again bring up the Ultimate Muscle for Kids dub is like surprisingly funny. It is it is like absurdist humor because there's a lot of elements that were very like Japanese humor or like pun based that in the 4 Kids dub, they just completely rewrote all sorts of things. Like entire jokes became just like meta commentary on the animation of the show. There is just like a bunch of funny, hokey accents that I think if I really, I saw like 2 or 3 maybe episodes, but I was like, oh, like this isn't necessarily like the thing I'm familiar with. So I didn't always like pay attention to it. That I realize now, I think I would have really loved it for both, like even as a kid, or just the surface level characters are doing the funny thing, and here's like your oh some like your fart humor kind of stuff. Like here's your base level, like hee hee, kid will laugh at this. That now also as an adult, you realize how much wild like stuff they got past the censors. There's a few jokes that do not land, definitely do not land nowadays. But a lot of it is like if people like Bobobo and if they like or know of the Ghost Stories anime dub being its own wild creation, this is like the TV friendly version of that. It is incredible how much they got away with. It is really good, and I wish I'd seen it as a kid before I saw it as an adult, but it was still great either way.
The main thing that I will say regarding the Ghost Stories dub, though, is that the moment that someone tries to watch that, and the moment there's way too much shit in that show that the moment that they see or hear any of it, instantly tune out. I watched it once, I can't watch it anymore.
Yeah, it's it's not for the faint of heart if you try to watch that thing in the English dub. It is crazy. I cannot believe that exists.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
All right. All right, let's see. Who else hasn't gone yet?
I think for me, two of them, I'm going to give you one live action and one cartoon.
All right.
For live action, especially because it took something like Looney Tunes and Naked Gun and put it in a different format for me. Because now I tracked down and bought all the episodes, was Sledgehammer, because it takes something like Dirty Harry and makes a parody of it. To a part where there's a scene where somebody mails them a bomb, but it's the round black with a fuse bomb, and they're juggling it until somebody throws it out the window. So it's not taking itself that seriously. I wish I could have watched that like as it aired on TV. And then the other one, because I mistook it for like a sports cartoon, would be like the Mighty Ducks, because the Mighty Ducks had like, it was back when they had like those really arching like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle type storylines and plot lines that had characters die or people switch sides and stuff. And I was like, I wish I would have watched that, but now I'm appreciating it now, trying to find out, can I get a collection of that or something like that now?
Yeah.
Then I don't really have a show that I can think of that was out when I was younger that I've come across now that I would love more than. So interpreting the question a little bit differently, A more modern show that I feel like would have benefited myself more as a younger person, Owl House, for sure. Like,
Yeah,
there's something special about having that level of representation in a show available for kids to see. Um, life is tough when you're growing up thinking, there's not many people out there like you, and huzzah.
exactly.
Lovely representation.
Yeah, because like every kid needs to have a show that identifies with them. Um, and I get it. Like there's some people who don't want to have their shows filled with like topics that are very heavy, but I feel like we also really need it too, because we need to be able to understand where other people are coming from, their own perspectives. Um, this is something that unfortunately is like diminishing with with time, because the type of shows that are coming out do not really feature any of these. Instead, we're starting to move more and more towards shows with AI, and there's no creativity with that. It's just make up a random plot, put such and such characters in a certain scenario, and have at it, except they don't even understand just why the characters exist the way they do. They have a certain meaning, they have a certain purpose, they have a certain reason. And AI cannot, like, they could, AI could come up with plots as much as it wants. The delivery will never be there. It's just gonna be like, okay, they're doing this, but why are they doing it? What is like somebody running away from? What goal is someone trying to achieve, and why are they achieving it? That's what I want to know. I care more about like what they're doing, or like rather like what's leading them, or what led them to do what they're doing, rather than reaching the goal, which sucks, because like uh there's a lot of people who play so many shows too safe. Like, safe doesn't necessarily have to mean it's bad, but sometimes you just want to see them go a little more the extra mile, just to see what can they actually do. But at the end of it all, I just feel like there's a lot of creativity that's just going away, and these greedy CEOs, they don't care about like how much damage they're doing to all these shows, movies as well, and other forms of entertainment. But in the relevance of shows, it's gonna get to the point where no one's gonna be watching anything, and they're not gonna take responsibility. They're not gonna apologize for any of that. They're just going to blame the people who they want watching the shows, because they're not watching them. You're not giving us a reason to. So, um, that's why I'm grateful for the shows that I did get to watch, because there was so much creativity. Even shows with bad episodes, because there's going to be bad episodes. At least they tried something. Whether or not they pulled it off depends on how people perceive it. So yeah, that's good. With that, that's going to do it for this episode of Sharing with Shellshock. So Tyler, Steve, Kyle, Korshal, I really appreciate you guys coming in for this show, as always. So it's good to have you.
Yeah, thanks again for letting me on. I always love getting to chat about stuff, even if I tend to ramble.
Oh, we all have our moments of rambling, perfectly fine, and thank you again.
Yes.
Bonus
It's
points
always
if
good.
if
Always
you
good to join.
recognize any of my shows too. Bonus points if you recognized any of those.
Yes.
Always good to join this podcast and talk all these fun memories of everyone.
Yep. But before we start signing off, Tyler, where can we find you?
I am findable at pretty much any site, Tigalimo94. Mostly finding me here on Twitch, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Sundays. Yeah.
All right. Where can we find you, Steve?
You can find me with the host, Jeremy from zenspath.com, as well as a kind of a rotating amount of people sometimes, depending on what we're talking about. You can find us on YouTube and as well as all your audio platforms.
Yes. Where can we find you, Kyle?
You can pretty much find me anywhere. Like as KyleGaymer, I'm on the Twitch, YouTube, as well as Blue Sky. Really need to start doing more content creating. I will get to it, I swear.
One step at a time, my friend. One step at a time.
Yeah.
And Korshal, where can we find you?
So you'll find me at twitch.tv/Korshal Valent. I typically stream about 3 times a week now. I've gotten really good about it. So if you want to see me there, typically Monday, then Wednesday/Thursday, and usually once during the weekend, you'll catch me about 3 times a week now. My days vary a little bit, but you see me there. And then also for my music content for YouTube at Korshal Valent, if you ever want to listen to some game remixes, you can look at my channel there. I do stuff roughly every 3 weeks. I'll have something up.
Sounds good. And you could also find me here on Twitch. You can find me here on Twitch, of course, Discord, Blue Sky, but I also do my Twitch VODs on my YouTube VOD channel, and I also have my main channel for the podcast, live reactions, and eventually I'll have original stuff on there, where I usually do daily streams Monday through Thursdays from 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern till midnight, with the occasional Friday and Sunday streams. So I'm going to take a break from sharing with Shellshock for a week, but in 2 weeks, we do have another episode, and we're going to talk about the Nintendo DS, which was a very, very great handheld, which had the dual screens. And joining me for that are Silverstone Condor, 112, Shad JV, and Minetta. That will be happening on Sunday, November 23rd at 9 p.m. Eastern, or either 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll figure that out. 2 weeks from now. So that's the next episode of Sharing with Shellshock. All right, so with that in mind, that is going to do it for Sharing with Shellshock for tonight. Again, Tyler, Steve, Kyle, Korshal, thank you all so much for being a part of this episode, and I'm very grateful to have you guys.
Always happy to be here.
Yep.
Thanks
Likewise.
again.
Yep. So as always, to everybody that's watching, make sure to take care of yourselves, be awesome, stay awesome. Tell your lovers you love them. Check on them as always. Fight for a lasting peace. I'll see you guys next time, and y'all have a good night. Take care.
Good night.
Thanks for watching Sharing with Shellshock Season 4. Your name will be inscribed in the pages of podcast history.